Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and if you're a guitar player who's looking to make some more money, then listen very closely to what I'm about to tell you. If you're a guitar player, or any other kind of musician for that matter, or if you know a musician who wants to make some more money without having to tour or go on the road, or put up with any of the other BS musicians normally have to deal with, then you need to download this new special report about how to make a small fortune by licensing your music. And by licensing music, I mean getting your music inserted into movies, television shows, and commercials. The report is less than 20 pages long, and it was written by Mike Elsner, who I interviewed in episode number 167 of this show. Mike's been doing this for over 14 years, and he's had over 2,000 songs licensed at this point in time. That means he's getting paid to license almost 150 songs per year. Now, keep in mind, most successful career musicians don't get paid for 150 songs in total over a 30 or 40-year career. Yet, Mike's getting paid for this on an annual basis. And the cool thing about this business is that you can run it from your own home studio, and you'll never have to deal with ivory tower record label executives telling you what to play and how to play it, and no shady managers or unethical business people telling you what to do either. So download Mike's free ebook on the 4-step plan to licensing success right now. Just go to everyonelovesguitar.com/Mike. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. Let me know how you like the book, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and I want to tell you a little story before I tell you about today's guest, who's just an amazing guitar player and an actually amazing human being. So a few years ago, long before I even had the idea about this podcast, I'm looking at some guitar videos on YouTube, and I see this guy, this like soft-spoken guy playing guitar, and he's got just an amazing tone, just incredible. You just like, this guy reeked of professionalism, right? And real classy and poise, and the guitar was just like an extension of him. You know, as I was telling before we started the call, that like him and the guitar had this negotiated this real give and take relationship with one another, you know. And the other thing was, you could just tell that he was a first class human being, you know. Like, there's certain energy that people give off, and my guest today just gives off that energy, you know. He's just like a real positive, kind person, and he's just fighting the good fight like everybody else, you know. And so I didn't know who he was at the time, but I really enjoyed both his playing and his enthusiasm over his, you know, love and affection for the guitar. And I think you were playing a blue or a dark Les Paul into a vintage Fender, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so if you've been a listener of this podcast for a while, then you've probably heard me say you can't connect the dots moving forward. In other words, there's no way I would have ever known that I would have the privilege of getting to know this individual and have him as a guest on the show, but here we are. So my guest today was inducted. He was inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum in 2008. He was one of the Swampers, which is part of the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, and he's played on several hundred records for an equal amount of artists, including albums by Bonnie Raitt, Joss Stone, Levon Helm, Bobby Blue Bland, Johnny Taylor, Little Milton, Etta James, and he's also released 3 CDs of his own. And speaking of Bonnie Raitt, Bonnie discovered our guest, which is Will McFarlane. She discovered Will playing in a club up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and asked him to be in her band. And Will wound up playing with Bonnie from 74 to 80, where he was living out in L.A. He then left L.A. to raise his children back in Muscle Shoals. And since then, he's continued doing session work, playing music, and traveling in ministry, and he's busier than ever right now. So, Will, I want to welcome you to the show. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really privileged to sit and get to know you and chat with you.
Yeah, it's great to be here, man. Great to be asked. And
Will is playing his guitar. I didn't want to start the show. He's got this new guitar, and I was like, I just want to listen play it, man. For people who don't know, Will, can you explain who the Swampers were and what was their relationship to Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section?
Well, the Swampers was a nickname that was given to the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section when they were doing a Leon Russell record by Denny Cordell. He was part of the production team with Leon when he was down here doing Tightrope and that. And he just thought they sounded so swampy, he just called them the Swampers. And the original 4 of the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, what was called the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, was Roger Hawkins on drums. And you've heard his playing. He's I'll Take You There. He's Respect for Aretha, Old Time Rock and Roll. Good Lord, Kodachrome, Love Me Like a Rock.
Oh, he used to Kodachrome. I didn't realize that those guys recorded down there in Muscle Shoals.
Yeah, Kodachrome. He did Kodachrome, Love Me Like a Rock, Still Crazy.
Wow.
And, of course, Roger played on Mustang Sally, Land of a Thousand Dances, Funky Broadway. I mean, he's just a remarkable drummer. Played on Think, Chain, Chain, Chain for Aretha. And then David Hood was the bass player. And David did I'll Take You There, Old Time Rock and Roll, just Kodachrome, the typical list.
Oh, he did that's a great bass line on that Kodachrome, man.
Yeah, I mean, David is just understated. This whole town is, as I say, we get paid for what we leave out. It's knowing what not to do. David's playing is just so economical and right. I've never cut a track with him that didn't feel good. There may not be a hot lick in it, but not one of them doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite people and one of my favorite bass players. And then Barry Beckett was the keyboard player, and just one of the greatest, keyboard players in general, but his whirly playing is mystical. I mean, you've heard it, you just don't know. It's as I said, Kodachrome, it's Still Crazy. He did that, We've Got Tonight for Bob Seger.
That thing on Still Crazy is wonderful, the keys there. Real lush.
That's very bad. What I always tell people about Muscle Shoals, and then Jimmy Johnson was the rhythm guitar player. And what I tell people about Muscle Shoals is that when you realize that I'll Take You There, Kodachrome, Old Time Rock and Roll, and Take a Letter Maria is the same band, that's why a lot of people don't associate it with one town, because their versatility is just amazing. And so they were called the Swampers by, Denny Cordell started referring to them, and people started referring to them as the Swampers. They were original 4, but they always had friends. As Jimmy said when he called me to let me know he was going to include me in the induction, he said, he just told the Hall of Fame guy, he said, we couldn't have done it without our friends. And their friends were Eddie Hinton on guitar and Pete Carr on guitar, who did like the twin lead at the end of Tonight's the Night for Rod Stewart, that kind of stuff. And that was Pete Carr. Spooner Oldham, who did the opening whirly lick on Never Loved a Man, Randy McCormick did the opening piano lick, the da-na-na-na-na-na-na on Old Time Rock and Roll.
How do you like that?
And then he said, and Will McFarlane's been here 20 years, and so they included me in their induction by their great largesse. And I just ended up being a lead guitar player that came in as a friend of the rhythm section and recorded with them for a couple of decades,
That's awesome. Thank you for explaining that. As far as Barry goes, do you know Mike Durham?
I know that name, but
he's a session guy in Nashville. He's a first call guy, and I interviewed him a while back. And real talented guitarist and real good person. And he told me a story about Barry, and he said Barry had a sign outside his office that said something like, "Be careful of the toes you step on the way up, because they will very likely be attached to the ass you need to kiss on the way down." And I was curious. That's great. Is that something that sounds like Barry would say? And do you maybe have a good Barry Beckett story to share?
I love Barry Beckett. I was privileged to be able to work for him. I learned something every single time I sat in the control room to do an overdub with Barry. First of all, when we were cutting tracks, when his shoulders started moving, you knew it was the take. He just had a great feel for the moment, and he knew what he was listening for. And he always pulled you back into a place of musicality. He pulled you out of that, I'm working for Barry Beckett, I got to do something cool. He took you out of that, and he just got this flowing stuff. You might want to rip into, some solo. And you go, listen to the reverb I've got on you, Will. So if you go and you listen to it, catch the reverb and go off. He goes, give that first note a moment to catch the reverb. And then, so now I always listen for what an engineer might have on me and what the tempo might be. And you know what I'm saying? Just Barry taught me how to listen. They all taught me how to listen. This whole town listens. I remember one day I was doing a track and I was doing a very simple rhythm guitar thing on acoustic guitar, and about every 16 bars, Roger Hawkins would just lift his hi-hat. It was a straight country. I was really just going, you know. But about every 16 bars, he'd go, or something like that. And I just started going, you know. And somehow that day, that simple little acoustic jangle with the hi-hat, almost, it was creating something in the mix. Simple thing. And Roger turned to me, and he didn't give compliments, you know, easily. He wasn't a bad guy. He just, you know, we were all just on the same team, and there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, smoke being blown. But he turned to me and he went, you sound good today. And I said, well, I'm just listening to you. And there was a few seconds of silence. He said, well, good players are good listeners. And so this whole section here is really about listening to the conversation and not trying to think about what you want to say before you hear what somebody else says. And Barry was just that guy. Plus, Barry charted amazingly. He had a great arrangement sense of where the energy was in the song, when it needed to hit, when it needed to let off. And I try when I chart for people to you know, be in the, you know, he's like my predecessor in charting and arranging with people, you know, and he's just that guy. One of my favorite stories, actually, of Barry is apparently he had an artist in the studio that was talking in colors. And they do this every now and then. You get an artist who goes, man, I want my verses just in the reds and pinks, but when I hit the bridge, I want it to sort of get darker and darker all the way to purple, and then maybe blues on the choruses, and then back to softer reds, you know. And this artist was saying he wanted something and he wanted this. It was all in colors. And Barry just sat down at the Hammond. He said, all right, look, I'm going to start pulling drawbars out. You tell me when it's green.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's just class. That's a good one. That's one of my favorite Barry Beckett stories.
That's great, man.
I wasn't there that day, but the story to me just rung true. You know?
Well, I guess he's got a lot of them, just like that sign, on his door, that kind of thing. There's a lot of, these larger than life kind of Barry-isms, I guess.
Well, this rhythm section, in some ways, caught lightning in a bottle. All of a sudden, Paul Simon heard "I'll Take You There" and just didn't. He wanted to cut "Love Me Like a Rock." He just had an acoustic thing of it with the Dixie Hummingbirds, and he was having trouble. People, because when you're by yourself, you pull time and all this, and this is before clicks and whatever, and so he was having trouble cutting the song. He wanted a full band version, but he didn't. He loved what he already had. And he apparently tried several rhythm sections. And when he heard "I'll Take You There," he called Al Bell and said, maybe I need to use that little black reggae band you got down there. And they said, well, I can work that out, but they're mighty pale, And "Love Me Like a Rock" and did Kodachrome. And people started realizing there was something down here. And the next thing you know, you've got, Willie Nelson and Delbert McClinton and the Rolling Stones and, Cher and Boz Scaggs, and not to mention all the soul guys, Bobby Bland and Johnny Taylor and Etta James and Wilson Pickett. And they just all came to this town for the feel of this town. And I love being here still now, and I think we're still carrying the mantle, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say you are, man. I would say you are. But that, I'm still...
excuse me, I don't want to interrupt. I was going to say, I think it just made them all very thankful. Every one of them has a gratitude for the career they've had. That was the point I was going to make. about this rhythm section down here, that Barry, as well as all of them, realize, wow, this could have happened anywhere in the world, but it happened in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and people came here and people enjoyed us, and I'm just thankful. I'm not going to cop an attitude about anything. I'm not going to get a head problem that I'm all that. Like, I don't know anybody around here that thinks they're all that. And there are some people around here who are all that.
Yeah.
But they're the least of them, like a Mac McAnally to me. He's just 9 years in a row voted best at instrument. He's one of the most humble, delightful human. He may be the best of all of us, and he's probably the most humble as well. And so it's in the water down here. Nobody gets this head problem and goes, aren't I the stuff,
I have to honestly say I've interviewed close to 200 guitar players, and I haven't had anybody, and especially with the older guys, people 45 older, 45 is younger than me, but people 45 and up that have been at it a while, the most humble, gracious, thankful human beings around, and it's really classy,
Well, what I really think is that there's an inherent humility built into the guitar. Like, I know some stuff. I know enough to work like I do, and I have a nice touch. I get nice tone. But the same thing, Jack Pearson will come sit in with my band. When he's warming up, I don't even know what he's doing.
Yeah, no, he's special.
He could sit in with Oscar Peterson, you know, and I wouldn't even attempt that. And so, and I'm not being humble right now. I'm actually, when I tell you that he knows more than me, I'm just speaking the truth. If you were to ask me who's better, I'd say Jack. And that's not being humble. That's just the truth. Sure. If you ask me about somebody that I'm better than, I might say, I know some things they don't know or whatever. But we all inherently realize nobody's hit the last lick yet.
Yeah.
There's always something to learn. There's always, like the moment I learn something new, I'll go, wow, I get it. All of a sudden, maybe some half-tone, whole-tone thing. I'll go, wow, that was awesome. And then I realize, gosh, Robin Ford's been playing like that for 15 years. I'm just getting it. I'm just coming to the trough,
Yeah.
So it keeps you level.
Do you know a guy named Red Volkart?
Oh, I don't know him well. I've met him. I shook his hand once, and he is a chicken-picking monster.
Yeah. But let me tell you an interesting story about Red. So, again, sweetest guy you'll ever talk to. Just lovely human being.
That's great.
And he has been a troubadour most of his life, literally traveling. He started playing when he was gigging at 13 in Canada. And all the while, and he was mostly single until, I think 3-4 years ago. He's really happily married now. He's got a nice farm. He's like a, domesticated guy now. It's really, cute kind of seeing him like so excited about his, the situation. So, but he was telling me, and he's he's one of those guys too, he's, you don't even understand how he does what he does, but he lived very astute, very,
frugally.
Very frugally. And so he never had a family. So what he would do is when he traveled all these places, he would rent a room. I'm in, Austin for 6 weeks or 3 months. He'd rent a room, literally a room, and he'd play 5-6 gigs a day, but he'd wake up, because he had no family, he'd wake up in the morning, sit on the edge of the bed, and play for 8 hours. And that's why he's, but you imagine the discipline, but in all you guys have some version of that story. So it's not like, oh, I just happen to have inherent talent. Sure, you might, but it takes more than inherent talent and ability to fog a mirror to do what you do.
There's an old joke I heard one time about a guy who bought a rundown farm, and he worked his butt off for about 3 years and put up a fence in front of the house and re-roofed it, went out and painted the barn, red, and just had the place looking great. And a friend of his walked by and said, man, it's just amazing what you and God have done with this place. And he said, yeah, but you should have seen it when God had it by himself. I'm not an irreverent person, but I think the gift is given.
Yeah.
But you've got to fan it into flame. You know, you can't just sit there and by osmosis, it's going to come dinging out of your head unless you're some kind of savant. And you hear about them every now and then. But you have to. Well, I remember when I was a teenager, and I remember just everybody in '69 was finger picking. It was the sort of James Taylor coming in, but you were listening to the Dave Von Ronk, and this sort of the folk scare came along, as Martin Mull called it.
Folk scare.
and I realized I just never bounced my thumb. And so I remember walking around this efficiency apartment in New York City. We were doing like open mic night at Gertie's Folk City, and trying to get a gig in New York, me and some of my high school buddies after we got out of high school, and I remember just, I was nothing, just very basic that, but just getting used to bouncing my thumb. And I remember just walking around all day because we were so broke, and I wasn't, if I'd left the apartment, what was I going to do? So I just walked around my apartment with the only guitar I owned at the time, which was an acoustic little Guild D35 that I bought with my own money, brand new, for $165.
That was a ton of bread back then.
It was. It was the most I'd ever scored, but it was a guitar that just spoke to me. And I played acoustic, and I had an electric guitar player and a bass player, buddies, and we were trying to make it sort of in that folk rock thing, Where
were you playing? Down in the Village?
Yeah, we were playing down in the Village, and just showing up, as I said, for open mic night, Everybody else in my family, was on their way to their second postgraduate degree, or whatever. And I was.
Oh, you come from a family of academics?
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, that's. You know what? I talked to a guy yesterday. I don't know if you know this guy named Alex Skolnick. He's a metal guy, but he's pretty well known.
Yeah, I've seen his name.
Yeah, and he same thing. He's from the Bay Area, and it comes from a family of academics. I think that's really difficult because academics measure. Their evaluation system is like not based in reality. No disrespect to obviously your family members or anything, but I have some, and everything is based on how much, papers you've published and how many letters you have after your last name. But that's like saying, I have 100,000 YouTube viewers. I've never played outside of my bedroom, but well, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, it's not a real for whatever we all feel real is, right? It's a subjective thing, but it's a weird thing. I would have a hard time dealing with academics.
My dad just felt that if you didn't get, that you wasted your mind if you didn't get an education. And he was a Naval Academy grad, but he got a master's in logistics from the Pentagon War School in Monterey, and he got a Juris Doctorate, and he practiced law for a while, and he was an engineering test pilot. Very left brain, though. He didn't get my musical thing. And I would say, Dad, I'm not doing this for rebellion. I mean, he would threaten to take my guitar away from me if I got a B in school.
Oh my God. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. That's just funny though.
And I mean, the B wouldn't be in a class like, I skipped a grade and, I was 14 years old in my sophomore year in high school, turned 15 June of that. I graduated actually. I turned 17 June of my senior year.
Which had to be tough.
And so I was always the youngest. I didn't even have a driver's license my senior year because you needed 17 in New York, and but I if I get a B in symbolic logic or or differential calculus, Dad, like I'm taking your guitar away, and I would say, Dad, I'm not doing this for significance or rebellion. I'm doing it because I feel that if I don't do it, something's broken, something's disconnected. I hear testimonies every now and then about people saying, well, in high school, the only way to meet girls was be an athlete or a musician. And I wasn't very athletic, so I picked up the guitar or whatever. And I go, I was actually so shy, I turned my back on the audience in my first bands, It wasn't like I was up there to meet girls. It was just that I felt like I had to. When I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I was like, even though they were Star Trek to me, I was like, that's what I do. That's, and my mother died when I was 5, and so she wasn't an everyday influence in my life. But she had perfect pitch, and she had a music degree from the University of Texas. And she was an opera singer and loved Nat King Cole. And, she was this super musical person that my dad finally in his late days would mention, yeah, your mother was always singing around the house. And I realized that in my DNA was this something that my father actually never totally related to. But it was just as much a part of me as, his 23 chromosomes,
I get it. That's interesting. So obviously you inherited the gift and the propensity from your mom.
Right.
That's very cool. Hey, let me ask you, let me throw out some artists out there, and I was curious if you could share some stories about how you got the gig, the nature of the engagement, and if you have any stories about working with them, and if there's any takeaways that you got. Start with Bonnie.
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, I am so fortunate to have spent the time with her. First of all, I think, and I don't just say it because I know her and I love her, I think she's the finest interpretive singer of my generation. Like, once she sings a song, that's it. It's like nobody else comes close. You know how many female singers who are good have gotten up on stage and said, hey, Will, I'd be honored if you'd play Angel from Montgomery with me. Or something like that. Or Love Me Like a Man or anything. And you just realize, that was pretty good. But oh my God, Bonnie Raitt, that's it. She's in another realm. And so I think, and when I listen back sometimes, I think, I was trying too hard there and I wish I'd laid back. But in general, she'd sing this, love has no pride. And you'd want to go, you didn't want it to go, love has no pride, some guitar, some useless guitar. Like you came up under her wings. And so it really, really affected me. Plus, she did blues, she did country blues, she did country, she did rock and roll. And it wasn't any of those titles. It was just her. She had a brand. As soon as her voice was on it, like when people ask me, is Bonnie country? I go, which country? She's just an American musician with all of these delightful roots that all came to this amazing head. If she sings a soul ballad or if she sings, whatever she does just becomes hers. But it also made me, my band before I was in Bonnie's band, we used to try anything, Buddy Holly, anything we liked. We went back and learned it. And we made our musical age way older than our chronological ages. When I was 19, I was, like all of us, we were learning Chuck Berry licks, We were learning, and we found out Chuck Berry listened to T-Bone Walker. So we went back and listened to the T-Bone Shuffle. And you know what I'm saying? And we found out he listened to Robert Johnson. We found out, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You look at the Beatles and you see who's R. Penniman, and you realize that's Little Richard and the Good Golly Miss Molly. And so we're all expanding our musical age so that we can be valuable, so that we can do something valuable, so that when the moment comes that somebody goes, I want to do an old Buddy Holly song, you're the guy. But if they say, I want to do an old Merle Haggard song, you could be that guy too. Because I listen to Roy Nichols, and I primarily play a telly. And so, I primarily play more like Cornell Dupree or Reggie Young on a telly. You know what I'm saying? But you had to get a little Roy Nichols in there, and then you found out that Roy Buchanan listened to, you hear Roy, and I used to live in D.C., and we used to go see Roy Buchanan play monthly.
Oh, you're kidding me. What was that like?
My goodness, that was just like, unbelievable. It's the first time you ever heard pinch harmonics, and he just owned it. I mean, he was just a different cat, I can't explain Roy Buchanan. He's just, he looked passionless physically, but if you closed your eyes, his guitar work was so passionate. He just owned it. Yeah. And there's, in some ways, if you're a telly player, I think there's before him and after him. I mean, sure, James Burton is all of our daddies on the telly. Let's face it. And out of James Burton came, all the Susie Q and the Elvis stuff and all that, and Emmy Lou. But Roy took that and just put an edge on it that there's just nothing like.
Yeah, I phenomenal. I mean, it's like Jeff Beck. You know, him and Jeff Beck are like the only, in my opinion, there's nobody like those two. I mean, their uniqueness is just way beyond what unique is for most people.
And also the thing that I loved again was permission that Roy Buchanan gave us all in a way, because I loved country, and there was a little country in all my blues, a little blues on my country, but Roy, I mean, the middle of a stone 12/8 blues, ba, ba, da, da, you know, I mean, he'd all of a sudden start doing pedal steel licks, you know, I mean, he just went wherever he felt like going. Whatever he drew out of his reservoir became incredibly valid in the now. And so there was a great permission, I think, that Roy Buchanan gave me.
I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, but you've seen him, that he would often turn his back to the audience.
All the time. Many times the set started, he turned his amp and his back. Because he played a Vibrolux on 10. And let me just tell you, that's a lot of amp in a club. You know, and so he would turn the amp away. He would dime it, turn the reverb to 2 and the rest of them on 10, turn his back and his amp to the audience, and just, you know, start out with, you know, and he just beautiful volume work, you know. I mean, it's obvious guys like, you know, Jamie Robbie Robertson, you know, got so much of that from Roy, and, you know, that kind of thing. He's a heavy influence.
Yeah, he's like unlike anybody, though. I mean, I've never heard anybody. There's a guy in New York City who has a real command over the telly like Roy, but he's not Roy. Jim Campolongo, if you know him.
Yeah, I know him.
Great player. Yeah, great player. But Roy was just so, and I'm not trying to say Jim's trying to be Roy. He's not. He's Jim. He's a great player. But I agree with you. I've never. Yeah. It's like, you know, there's no words to really express that, Roy.
Yeah, he was when I saw, I mean, we just stand there like with our jaws dropped going, wow, you know. And apparently he shot himself in the foot every time stardom came his way.
Yeah, I've read that.
You know, it's sort of a tortured soul, which is too bad. And so was Danny Gatton. Yeah. You know, I mean, Danny, at one point when I was playing with Bonnie, we were playing DAR, Constitution Hall there in D.C., which was Danny's town. And I turned around backstage. All of a sudden, there was Danny Gatton, you know, and I'd seen him play so many times and met him. And we didn't know each other well, but we were, you know, we knew each other. And I went, oh, my gosh, Danny. I went to Bonnie. I said, Bonnie, during the encore, the best guitar player that you've never heard of before in the world is standing right over there. Could he just pick up my Telecaster and come out and join us for this, you know, blues song? She was going to do Long Lonesome Road or something. And she was like, sure. So I went to Danny. I went, Danny, just come on stage. I've got a 55 telly out there plugged into a Music Man. Just come on out. Oh, no, man, I don't know the song. Oh, man, it's 12 bar. It's just own it. Oh, well, no, you know not. And he didn't. He didn't come out. And I realized, you know, he's just a tortured soul, you know, the idea that he wouldn't walk out on stage with Bonnie Raitt, be a guest right there in his hometown in D.C., and just sit in with her and rip a solo on Long Lonesome Road, you know. And it was just disappointing to me, but it gave me some insight when years down the road he took his own life as well as Roy had. And that was just such a shock to my system. And I realized somewhere in the midst of all of that musical genius, there was this tortured soul that never quite kept a perspective.
Yeah. Wow. When Bonnie, I know the story is when Bonnie came across you in a club in Cambridge. What were you doing up there?
Well, you know, I'm a Texan. I'm a Navy brat by heritage, but we lived between there and Jacksonville or Orange Park, Florida, wherever the aircraft carriers were. And since my mom had passed, my dad would have to be shipped overseas at times. I'd go back and live with his family, with our family in Texas. And so when I was 14, my dad resigned active duty, stayed in the Navy Reserve, still commanded a squadron, and moved us to New York, to Long Island, and he became a test pilot for Grumman Aircraft.
Yeah.
So I was pitched right into a New York public high school, and there I was in the great Northeast. That was culture shock.
Yeah, I would imagine. Where are you living? That's like Crocodile Dundee, man.
I said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
New York called me redneck and cornpone and hayseed.
Oh my God, where were you living?
In Long Island, North Shore.
North Shore.
Locust Valley. I went to Locust Valley High.
That's so funny, man. Yeah. New Yorkers, and I will own this for sure, are very myopic. It's like we don't recognize, like we know, like there's Jersey, Florida, California. It's really bad. It's a very ethnocentric place, and I don't know why. Because all you grow up with is people from everywhere. I mean, I grew up with people from, my wife was from a small town in England. If we come across somebody who has the slightest accent, she just doesn't understand it because she just didn't see anybody but white people,
right.
Pasty white people for her whole life. Me, like I could understand anybody with any accent. And she'd be like, oh, what did he say? He's, well, this, he's just probably from Pakistan. She's like, oh, how do you know that? I'm like, it's like what you grew up with. So it's really weird that New Yorkers are at the same time like that,
Yeah, I finally met ethnic people when I got to New York, you know. I finally realized why I didn't like pizza in Florida. All of a sudden, all my classmates were going to go out for pizza, and I was like, ugh, it just tasted like tomato paste on a matzah to me, And the next thing you know, I'm at this, some awesome pizza place, and the first bite I went, I get it, because I've never had New York pizza, and everything, Polish galumki and. Anyway, I married a Polish woman from Massachusetts. When I moved her down south, she had the same problem. It was like she just thought people sounded like a banjo. It was like bang dang dong bong dong dang gang. I translated for her when we first moved down south, but I sort of needed one when I moved to New York. And hey, what's your name? Oh, new kid in town, whatever. Like, okay, there are usually R's where I come from. So I lived in the Northeast. We moved upstate New York because one of my music buddies' parents had a barn, and we just, lived in a barn, and then we rented a house, and, hippies living there with the band set up in the living room with beads for doors. We didn't even have doors. We just had beads,
Where was this?
And that was outside of Binghamton.
I know Vestal Plaza. Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Well, we lived in Lisle.
I know exactly where that is.
Near Whitney Point on the Ithaca Cutoff. We rented a farmhouse there, and we had a band. And we found out, we heard somebody was visiting D.C. and came back and said the club scene in D.C. is awesome. So as a band, we moved to Washington, D.C. and gigged there for a year. And then somebody said, man, Cambridge is where it's at. And so we all moved as a band to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that was amazing. There were probably 500 bands listed with booking agents locally, and there were just 50 clubs. And so you could do 2 nights in a row at all these clubs if they liked you. And I started gigging. And actually the band there broke up. And we reformed, a couple of us, and we were just gigging around Cambridge. And Bonnie Raitt's manager, who's one of my he's one of my favorite people in life. His name's Dick Waterman. Dick Waterman is a complicated individual. Before he managed Bonnie, he ended up managing Bonnie. He was a photojournalist. He has killer pictures of like Ted Williams and RFK and, but he's the one who went and found Son House and went and found Mississippi Fred McDowell, Mississippi, and found Arthur Crudup, and he went and found him and managed him and got him out there again and introduced Bonnie actually to Fred McDowell because she was a young budding artist in Cambridge at the time, going to Radcliffe,
Oh, so she was a student up there.
Yeah, and okay. She met Dick Waterman, and he turned her on to all this Delta blues that she just had in her soul. I mean, she's this daughter of a Broadway idol, I mean, he was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, John Raitt was like, oh my God, he was a heartthrob Broadway. He did the original Oklahoma, the original Carousel. He's in the movie Pajama Game. And so she was raised by a singer, Broadway idol. Big John was a delightful human being too. I love the guy.
So she grew up in New York then?
She had upstate New York. I think they had lived north of New York, more in the country.
Okay.
But yeah, she did that between there and L.A. because he was in L.A. a lot too. I think she graduated from Uni High in Hollywood.
Okay. Very cool. And
so she had an East Coast, West Coast connection because of the entertainment industry with her dad. And so Dick Waterman stayed in Cambridge. Bonnie's management was all in Cambridge, even after Bonnie had moved to L.A. and she lived in Laurel Canyon or Hollywood Hills somewhere. And Dick and Jeffrey, her management, still lived in Cambridge, as did her road manager, who became one of my best friends, Tim Burnett. And so I was just a local musician, and Dick Waterman started showing up at my gigs.
You know what? And now that you mention, I think he's got a website online with all his photos, doesn't he?
He very well may, and he's got the quintessential photographs of like the young Bonnie and Sun House and Muddy Waters. I mean, when Buddy Guy got the or the whatever it is, the Kennedy Award thing at the Kennedy Center, and all the big pictures behind him that they put, and they're showing Buddy Guy's life and history and doing the tribute. 3 of the 6 photographs in that tribute were Dick's.
Okay. I'm almost positive. Yeah.
He's a wonderful photographer, but he's a great thinker. He's a editorialist. He's just to have been discovered, so to speak, by Dick is a real compliment to me, I would say, because I think he's in some ways sort of a strange Renaissance kind of a man, and has opinions on every subject. His opinions on baseball are as valuable as his opinions on music, And he's just a good guy, and he started showing up at gigs, and he was a real interesting character, like, eccentric at least. He had a Fu Manchu and wore like Clint Eastwood hats and a black leather vest, and he'd smoke those sort of gnarly rum-soaked skinny cigars, and he would show up at the gigs I was doing, and every now and then he'd talk to me, and one day he just showed up front row with Bonnie. And it was the last song of the set, and we were actually just doing an Al Green song. We were doing "Since We've Been Together," whatever.
Yeah.
Loving you for.
Yeah, I remember that song.
Whatever. And she just jumped up at the end of the song and said, "Introduce me." And we talked at the bar, and she went out and got nodes, actually had a run-in with some kind of a flu or nodes or something, and didn't tour for about 6 months. And I thought that was off the table. And 6 months later, her manager called me and said, you in the place right now where you could go do 50 cities with Bonnie?
Holy shit.
And I was like, are you kidding me? You bet. I was working during the day for a moving company that was all sort of struggling musicians. It's called Marrakesh Express. And in Cambridge, cool 400,000 college students hit town every year to go to, Harvard, MIT, Tufts, BU, Boston College, they're all there, Radcliffe. And so we'd move, people into town, third floor walk up to third floor walk up. We had great legs by the end of the time, but we were all gigging at night. And I'm thinking, here I am making, $10 a night and all the beer I can drink and working for a moving company to the day. Would I like to do the Late for the Sky tour with Jackson Browne? I don't know. Give me a
Wow. Are you still friends with any of those guys that you were in that band with originally?
Actually, yeah, very much so. We Marty Greb and I are very dear friends. Actually, he wasn't in the original band. It was some of Jackson Browne's band. Jay Winding was the keyboard player for that first tour. And Freebo, the bass player, my goodness. I still actually, when he comes to my neck of the woods, I get together with him and play with him. And Dennis Whitted, our delightful drummer, passed. And it's still a broken-hearted thought whenever I have it. But yeah, there's and every now and then Bonnie, over the course of the last certainly 20 years, last 10, 5. She'd invite me up every now and then for an encore, you know, and when she knew I was on the guest list. And yeah, I adore those people.
That's great. Do you know George, her current guitar player?
I do know George.
And
favorite guys and favorite guitar players. And, you know, we went to very different schools together. And I love the way he plays. I love the way he interprets Bonnie stuff. It's funny. I think the first time I ever saw George play, he was just sitting in with Felix Cavalier playing this funky soul music, you know, really playing great slap rhythm stuff. And of course, with Bonnie, he's a marvelous interpreter. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, he's good.
Our whole band. I love Hutch. I love Ricky. Mike Finnegan is, good Lord. You know, there's different than him, but there is not better. He's just one of the greatest blue-eyed soul singers and Hammond players I've ever heard.
That's awesome, man.
He's got a killer band.
Okay, so that's how you met Bonnie. Levon Helm, how did that come about? Because he's like,
you know, after I finished with Levon that day, I mean, honestly, one of 5 times in my life that I've used the expression, I could quit now and tell people I used to be in the music business, you know, because Levon is an icon to me. Yeah. And he did a solo record on Muscle Shoals Record for a very brief period of time. They had their own label at the studio called MSS Records. And Levon was a signed artist, along with Russell Smith from the Amazing Rhythm Aces and Lenny LeBlanc. And so they brought me in to do a little playing on Levon's record. Well, where I really got to know him, because that was just a quick deal, is a few years later, he came back through town to cut tracks for somebody else's record that I was playing guitar on. So we spent the day in the studio cutting tracks. We cut like 3 tracks. And then right then they said, you know, I want to get some back porch feel here. I want Levon to play some mandolin. But Will, would you play some dobro? Would you play some bottleneck? And I said, God, I'd love to. So they set me next to Levon, unbaffled, in 2 chairs. And Levon said, here, why don't you try playing this? And apparently Donald Fagen had just given him for his birthday a steel-bodied dobro.
Wow.
And so I pick up Levon's, you know, steel-bodied dobro and get out my slide, and we just sit next to each other in these 2 chairs, and they'd roll tape. And he just wanted initial impressions, like a back porch feel. But Levon he might go like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take the intro, you take the first verse, and after that, it's every man for himself. You know, just
every
great
man for himself.
You know what I mean? It would be funny stuff, like everything you wanted from Levon. He just good country wit, but, you know, I mean, yeah, dumb like a fox. I mean, just an amazingly talented, deep artistic root there. And after 3.5 hours, and he'd already struggled some with his disease, and you know, wasn't singing anymore really. But
what year is this?
I can't remember. The first time it was early '80s, and the second time might have been either late '80s or early '90s.
Okay.
And he was just amazing. He was just amazing to me, and we just had wonderful conversations and spent hours together, and it's just time well spent. That's all I can say.
That's great. What an iconic, you know, he left his mark on everything, you know, musically, vocally, just, you know.
And when he talks, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Shooter.
No, I didn't. With
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah.
Plays like a falsely accused guy trying to right himself.
Yes.
And Levon plays an old, wise, you know, long-range shooter. He's great in that movie.
You know what? I have to go back and watch it.
You just have to catch Levon's section of that movie. If you don't want to watch the whole movie, there's just about a 10-minute section in the middle, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, where Levon is in that movie. And it's my favorite acting he does.
Was that the one where he supposedly tried to kill the president or something like that?
No, he just says, like there was only one shooter behind the grass, you know, like there was nobody behind the grass. No, you know,
okay.
He's like, and Wahlberg says something like, you know, like they didn't bury them out in the desert or something like that. And he goes, you know that for sure? He says, still got the shovel. Anyway, it's just very funny.
I have to go check that. I know I did see the movie ages ago when it came out with my wife, so I'll have to go watch it just to see that Levon part. That'd be kind of cool.
Just the Levon part is that it only, whenever I'm channel surfing every now and then and catch that, just sort of wait for the Levon section because it's just how he sounded. You hear these voices like, I got to cut a couple of tracks where Jerry Wexler brought in Steve Winwood to sing a duet with Etta James.
Wow.
And that's amazing because Etta was big at the time. I mean, she was a large woman, and Steve Winwood is not a large man.
No, he's a very slight man.
Yeah, so he probably weighs 135, 40 pounds, and Etta was probably 350. And yet, here they both are, these iconic voices that I've heard Steve Winwood since Give Me Some of Lovin'. Actually, probably before that, Spencer Davis, Somebody Help Me or something, just amazing voice, again, iconic. And all of a sudden it's in my headphones. How many times have you played, Give Me Some of Lovin' or something, or do a Steve Winwood song, but it's you singing it or it's somebody else in your band, and all of a sudden, it's actually the original voice.
Is that weird?
It's wonderful. It happened to me with Wilson Pickett when I finally got to play a live gig with Wilson Pickett. We open up with, we open up with and we're boom, dun, we're doing and he comes out all of a sudden his voice, I'm going home, and you go, my gosh, that sounds just like Wilson Pickett.
It sounds like the record.
And you realize I've never done it with that voice on it. There's always been somebody else, and all of a sudden you got the original, and it's amazing. And actually, every now and then, Winwood was tipping his hat to Etta, and both of them sounded the same when they sang together. It was like Lennon McCartney. This sound came together, and it was remarkable how it blended. They sounded almost identical, and I thought, how did that happen? But opportunities like that, when you get to hear in person the voice of somebody that you've heard all your life and has been iconic, that's what it was like just talking to Levon. It was just, I don't know. As I said, I told people I could quit after that day and tell people I used to be in the music business.
That's very cool. I saw Winwood actually open for Santana, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and I didn't know he was such a good guitar player, actually.
Great guitar player.
Yeah.
All that early Queen and early stuff, a lot of that's him playing guitar.
Really sounded great. I was quite surprised. You mentioned to me that you're working now as much as you've ever worked. What do you work on? Anything particular you're excited about?
No, mostly, I'm excited about all of it, if you really want to know. I don't want to sound weird, but
no,
I love the idea that I get to play and we go in there and we hear this stuff, and a lot of times it's right in our roundhouse, but every now and then it's a stretch, and they've seen the documentary. What's happening is a lot of people see the documentary on Muscle Shoals.
Right. And
they think, wow, instead of going to Nashville or whatever, or even New York, or let's go to Muscle Shoals. Let's get the old guys. Let's get good. Let's get Spooner. And so generally if they call Fame is gracious enough to call me first, because they know I'll get with the artist and chart and grease the wheels for everyone else. David and Spooner don't want to have to come in and spend hours, pre-production and whatever. And I don't blame them, but I'll do it. And so I grease the wheels. And because of that connection and friendship, many times I'm getting this call, from people, and they're all different kinds of things. I mean, as I said, the Josh Stone thing came out of people wanting Muscle Shoals musicians on it. And that was great. I mean, we're just cutting a soulful singer doing old soul. I did soul sessions, or one of the volume 2 maybe, and so it was just like cutting old R&B stuff with this wonderful young soul singer on it, and that was cool that way. But we had a young soul singer from England want to come to Muscle Shoals. Her name's Lynn Jackaman, and she came over here and did a record, and it was just smoking, just a smoking soul singer. And I just, at some point or another, in almost all of the things we've done. We had Mike Ferris come down here, if you know his singing.
Why do I know that name, though?
He's from the Screaming Cheetah Willies or something. But he also won a Grammy 2 years ago for Best Roots Gospel Record.
Okay.
And he came down here for a Muscle Shoals tribute record that they're doing on Dreamline Records. And we remade I'd Rather Go Blind with a male vocal with Mike Ferris on it. And killer. I mean, you could tell when you're going down, this is the take. And he was out on the floor. It was like the old days. They had him baffled, but the drums were on the floor and the vocalist. And so there was a room mic ambience in the room, and it just felt like 1967. You know what I'm saying? It just had perfect leakage in it. And the first run through, we knew, well, what are we going to do better than that? It was just a master vocal with a master track, and we took it with him. It was great. And so you can't help but get excited when you're involved in something like that. And
it's funny you mentioned that song. That I always think of I am a big Freddie King fan, and he did a version of that song. I'd rather be blind, or I'd rather what is it called? I'd rather go blind.
Go blind.
Yeah. He did a version of that. I just hear him. There's another character larger than life, kind of.
Oh man, yeah.
You left Bonnie to move to Muscle Shoals. What prompted that move, and how did the first connection between you and the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section go down?
Well, I was hanging out on Monday nights at the Troubadour.
Out in L.A.
That's
in L.A., yeah.
Yeah, Janet and I had moved to L.A. because Bonnie was going to spend a little time off the road, and Cambridge was dry at the time, and we had 2 little children at the time. Janet and I got married, and a little over a year later, we had twins. So we had little boy-girl twins, and we made, I say, the mistake of moving to L.A. because L.A. in some ways to me was a soul suck. And I'm not down on anybody who lives there, trust me. But, after 2 years out there, and it was cool. I was getting gigs. I, ended up, because of the Bonnie Raitt connection, people would hire me because they wanted that. A lot of female artists wanted me to play guitar for them. But also I toured with the Pointer Sisters, and right after they had the hit Fire, and I was just working out there. But, you'd get up and decide, okay, I have a rehearsal at such and such a time. Do I want to leave 3 hours early and get there in 35 minutes? Or do I want to 2.5 hours to kill? Or do I want to get there on time and have sat in traffic for 2 hours, And it just became a soul suck to me, when you come home and go, my God, I put 38 miles on my car today, and I was in it for 3.5 hours. I just can't live like this. But my Monday nights, I'd go out on the town and hang out, with there was a core of us that hung out at the Troubadour and, listened to music, sometimes sat in with the band, hung out and talked. And it was a really stellar group, like Marty Greb maybe, or, guys like that we were, it's where I met Leon Russell in the Troubadour, and he invited me home with him that night to cut a track, and I cut a track up on his record, and so we were all hanging out there, and I met a guitar player named Duncan Cameron, who was in the Amazing Rhythm Aces at the time. He's a great guitar player, great everything, steel player, telly player. He ended up in Sawyer Brown. All those solos on their hits were Duncan. And Duncan's just a great player, and we were hanging out some, and the manager of the Rhythm Aces was helping to start the label down here. And one night I had played him some of my stuff, and he said, I want my Muscle Shoals buddies to hear your stuff. And so he brought me over to the Sunset Marquee and introduced me to Jimmy Johnson, one of the original Swampers, and said, well, play me something. So I played him a song, and Jimmy goes, well, play me something I don't like. And there was just an easy Southern hang for me, you know what I mean? It was good to be back, really, just hanging out with a good old Southern boy. And Jimmy said, I'd like to demo that. And so they flew me down to Muscle Shoals. And I was here for 3 days, and no traffic, beautiful Tennessee River Valley. You know, I went into the studio, and they were going to just demo my song to pitch an artist deal on me. And they demoed it, and the band was Roger Hawkins and David Hood and Clayton Ivey and Randy McCormick and Mac McAnally. And Duncan Cameron came in just to play on it too, so there'd be 2 electrics, and I could just concentrate on the song. And at my headphones, I'm listening, and I just done 2 Bonnie Raitt records and played on the Urban Cowboy soundtrack, and I was doing all this stuff. And we ran down sort of looked through the chart once, ran it down maybe, and then said, well, it doesn't cost any extra to hit a red light. And we just played the tune, felt great. At the end of it, Jimmy goes, any confessions? And it's sort of quiet out there, and I look over, and he goes, come on in. I looked at David Hood, who I didn't know. I just met. Now we're dear friends. But I turned to David and said, you guys keep first takes around here? And he goes, all the time. And I swear, I flew back to L.A., gave everybody notice, and people said, you're committing career suicide. You're leaving Hollywood. You're working. You're nuts. And I said, you know something? I'm just going to move to the land where they keep first takes.
That's so. They basically said you got a gig here if you want to come down.
Well, it wasn't a promise. It was just come on down and see what happens. And you know, nobody from L.A. is going to move right into a North Alabama town and be all that. But I did sign with their publishing company, and I started doing some playing with them. Then they started using me, and then the next thing you know, I was just the call that they use when they did sessions. And so I did so many sessions with Roger and David and Clayton mostly. Barry Beckett had moved to Nashville by then. And
how did your wife feel when you came home and said, "Hey, Hunter, I think we should leave and go to"?
You know, that's a great it's a great question, because Janet, being a New Englander, had no, you know, her initial dealings with the South weren't all that necessarily positive, but was so
that was very politically correct how you said that.
But I'm a Southern. I love the tempo of the South.
Yeah.
You know, when I first moved to New York, it's like jumping on the back of a moving train and hanging off for dear life.
Yeah,
you know?
I get that.
So everything's got, you know, it's all like that. And down here, it's like, you know, could be the heat, could be the humidity, but take your time, son.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's one of my favorite quotes I've ever gotten the first time I ever played for Bobby Bland. And I'll get back to the story about moving down here with Janet. The first time I ever played for him, he just lost Wayne Bennett, who'd been with him for 35 years. And they bring him into Muscle Shoals Sound, and it was Roger and David, and me and Clayton. And he says, well, there's your guitar player. This is Will McFarlane. And he didn't even say, hi, nice to meet you. I was tuning a Strat, and he goes, that's a rock guitar. Because he'd always been used to Wayne playing like a 350, you know, big F-old thing. And I said, and my first answer was, well, Buddy Guy plays one. He goes, that's what I mean. And so we start the first song, and it kicks off at the 5, dun, 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 and I go, and he goes, take your time, son.
Take your time.
And I went, whoa, well, we didn't keep that track. So the next time I went, dun, 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 I went, la, da, 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 da. You know, I mean, I just played like 5 notes. And okay, he starts going, okay. It was another one of those, take your time, son. But I was going to say that Janet was so glad to get out of L.A., she would have moved anywhere.
Okay.
She'd even moved to Mississippi. That's one of our jokes.
What? But, why? She just felt this. She just. I mean, was it because she's from the Northeast and that kind of the thing I said to you about L.A.? It's just like we don't get it, or.
Yeah, it wasn't just that she didn't get it. My wife is incredibly, you know, artistic and intelligent, and she got it. It just wasn't her favorite.
Yeah.
And she hated the traffic too. And I was also, you know, I was almost living boogie nights kind of stuff. You know, I was driven out there, you know, and the cost of living was high, and you got to work, and you're, you know, on go, and it was hard to find a babysitter. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who do you trust? And it wasn't a kid-friendly environment for either one of us. And when I came home after Michael, I'd said to Mike, man, we're just not having any fun in LA. We're not happy. And he goes, why don't you move to Alabama? And I actually, while I was on the phone with him, I turned to Janet and I said, how about Alabama? And she goes, that'd be great. Or something like that, like fine. And I went, whoa, is it that close to the service?
Yeah.
Answer's yes. You know, she was happy to be out. So I gave everybody notice, and I had a Ford E150. And we put a bed in the back of it and screwed some car seats to the floor and headed across the Mojave Desert.
And just packed up, and that was it.
Just packed up and moved to Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
And how long have you been there now?
Well, that was 1980.
Okay, so it's almost 37 years.
Yeah, crazy.
That's awesome, man. One thing, and you've said this not said it, but you've given examples of it twice. In your playing, it seems like you treat the singer as another instrument, and you find your way to blend with that instrument. Like, I didn't get the sense out of you that, you know, I'm going in here to play guitar at all. I got the sense that, you know, I'm going in here this is another band member, happens to play voice, and we're going to do stuff to enhance each other.
Really, it's that, but it's also really, it's the song. Like, you know, you can arrange a song in a lot of different ways, but I use an expression sometimes to say, you know, you can do it differently, but you can't do it better. You know, you could play maybe high and more notes or low and slower, but right now, what we just did, let this song breathe. This song is breathing. You hear the emotion of the lyrics. You hear what the singer's doing. So it's really any song we cut that's going to have a vocal. It's about the vocalist singing this song. And if you're stepping on the vocal, or you're hitting it harder than he is, or you know what I'm saying, and if you're out of the dynamic range of what this singer's feeling this song as. But then again, there are times where the band feels so right, the singer goes, man, I got to up my game. You know, I was practicing it in my bedroom and it felt like this, but now that I'm hearing it, man, I gotta force a little more air through. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It happens, but it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And like this one, I'm trying to listen to what you're asking me. I'm not trying to think about what I want to say before I hear what you ask me, even though I might run off down a rabbit trail later.
No, it's great. It's great.
So I'm glad that's working with you, but
totally working.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to have a conversation because it'll be richer for both of us. We've all had conversations with people where you can tell they're just watching your mouth so that when it stops, they talk. And there are musicians like that.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There are musicians who are just waiting for you to shut up so they can talk. And they don't generally make great session guys.
Okay, what you're saying is the whole philosophy is very similar when I interviewed Reggie Young. And Reggie said, he goes, the guys, because, you know, he had his team up there, just like you guys.
Oh, yeah.
And he said that we looked at our singer we didn't look at her, that we're her supporting band. We looked at it that we're in her band.
Right.
We are in her band. And it's exactly, literally, philosophically, you know, playing your approach. It's exactly what you're saying. It's the same thing. It's
well, to me, Reggie Young is the finest tracking musician I've ever met, I've ever known. I call him friend. He's dear to me.
Yeah, great guy.
A huge influence on me. I mean, just if all you've ever learned, if you only had one song to woodshed on, and you went to
Dobie Gray,
Drift Away, Dobie Gray's Drift Away, and you went, and that's all you learned how to do, and you really figured out how he thinks. You can play on anybody's record in the world if you know that, you feel that song. But then Son of a Preacher Man, you know.
Yeah.
Who thinks like that? You know, he's just, and so the idea that you would say that reminds me of Reggie, anything I do that reminds you of Reggie, I consider praise.
Oh, it's literally philosophically 100% in line with what he said. And, it's kind of funny, since you're like, you know and like Reggie, I'll tell you a funny story on it. I interviewed him and I said, Reggie, before you did the take, I think we were talking about the Dobie Gray song. I said, did you know what you were going to play? He goes, I had no idea.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but that's his. But he's
like the intro to. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good, man. You're excited. We are. Both of us are.
Intro to Billy Swan's.
I Can Help.
I Can Help.
Yeah.
That augmented. I didn't know that was Reggie until several years back when we were going to do it with Billy Swan as a benefit here for our dear friend Donnie Fritz. And Reggie was on the gig, and I was on the gig with Kelvin Holly, my guitar playing buddy. And Kelvin and I were sitting there trying to figure out what that lick was, and we thought it was two guitars doing it. So the two of us are working it out. We're spending like 5-10 minutes trying to get that, and we turned to Reggie, said, have you heard the intro to this? And he goes, I did it, and we felt like, and he just one takes it, we all went, okay, schooled again by the master. But and he said he was just trying to experiment while he was warming up that day in the studio with augmented runs. And Billy came over and said, man, that sounds so cool. Why don't you do that to open this song? He didn't know he was going to do it until 5 minutes before. It was just an exercise he was working on.
The real cool thing about him is I heard, do you happen to know Troy Lancaster?
I know the name. I don't know him.
Troy's a session guy in Nashville. Really good guy, and he's played on like 48 #1 hits. But he's like our age, totally mellow, like a very mellow, low-key guy. And Troy told me the story. He said the first time I think it was his first studio gig ever in Nashville, and he's in there with Reggie.
Yeah.
So it's enough pressure. So he said he remembers going over to Reggie and asking him, hi Reggie, can I, introduce himself? Can I please go look at your amp? And you know what Reggie said? He said, man, come over here. I'll show you.
Yeah.
And to me, that's how you measure like for me anyway, that's how I measure someone's character. Not how you treat the guy who's cutting your check, but how you treat the guy that, in a business setting, at that point, it doesn't matter how you treat. You know what I'm saying? But he didn't say, yeah, it's right over there. Go look. He goes, yeah, come over. I'll show it to you. What questions do you have? And like, how kind, what a nice, kind thing that is,
I have the exact same story that the first time I ever worked with Reggie, he was doing something that was so cool. And when I was in LA, like I'd ask a guitar player, I'd hear a great solo he'd done. I'd say, man, what were you using? It was like, that's for me to know and you to find out. You know what I mean?
That was literally the answers?
I actually got that. I actually got that answer from an engineer the first time I ever got split stereo in my headphones. Like, I'm just playing along and all of a sudden it went, oh, like that first stereo split, and I went, oh my gosh, that's awesome. What are you using? And he said, that's for me to know.
That's for me to know and you to find. What is he, 12?
Something like that. And so with Reggie, he does this amazing thing. And I said, what are you doing over there? And he goes, I'm just putting this. I hit this. Here, come on over. And he says, here, plug into my rig with your guitar. And he literally unplugs his guitar before a session, plugs me into his rig. And because Reggie's so at peace with who he is musically, it's information. It still comes down to your touch.
Yeah.
It all starts at your fingers. If you picked up my rig right now, it would sound like you, It sounds...
Man,
you know what I'm saying?
You do something... Wait a minute. I got to say this. I got to cut you off. Sorry. When you pick up that guitar, man, it's just like, I almost want to stop and cry because the tone you get is just like, whoa, wow, that does it. I'm done.
Well, I don't know enough good tone. That's what I tell. I got to get good tone. The days where maybe an engineer's just mailing it in or whatever and it sounds high or everything in the headphones is sharp, I overplay trying to compensate for the fact that I don't have good tone, and I'm not that good a guitar player without good tone.
No.
Once you have good tone, you just wait. You know, it's, you know what I mean.
No, but I watch you and see see what you mean. What you mean?
It's the secret of my life. But Reggie's touch is so solid that he's so at peace with himself that anything that's his is yours, because he figures you're going to process it in your own way. He's not threatened if I get better because I learned one of his tricks.
Yeah. And that was his, the overriding theme of, like, I think I asked him a question like, what are you most proud of yourself? I asked it in a way because he's not a guy who's going to brag, but, you know, I said, what are you most comfortable about? Or what have you accomplished that you're most happy with, or something like that? And he said, I always really, it was very important to me to always be myself in my music. And I feel comfortable. I've had a career and I've done that. I never tried to be anybody else ever, you know? And then of course he tells stories about one time he's in there and there's some guy that said, "Hey man, can you sound like Grady Martin?" And Reggie looks up, he goes, "Doesn't he live here?" Like,
Right.
like call him up. You don't need me. And he goes, I didn't realize I wasn't trying to be funny. I was just like being kind of like, like, why don't you get him in here? You know? And he said the whole like studio was hysterical laughing. He goes, and I was, because he's like really respectful. And he said, I wasn't trying to be a smart aleck or anything. So, but anyway, man, I'm sorry. I this is about you. I know you're a Reggie fan. So, okay. So you came down here, on your website, you talked about a couple of events that impacted you pretty deeply. And I don't know if you're okay talking about this. You're not. It's totally fine. One of them was you lost your brother. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
My brother and I were very close. First of all, we were only 18 months apart. And, as my deep family story goes, my father talked my mother into having another child, even when she was very, very sick with cancer. And my mother died, before I was 6 years old. I was 5, so my brother was 3.5. And it obviously, it's funny. We're so good at being human beings. We're so good at our defenses. We actually don't really know where our defenses end and our personalities begin. We're just so good at it because I don't remember at the time it affecting me, but it must have deeply, but we just go into our survival mode, and my dad remarried again. And of course, Bobby and I were still very close, and she had 3 kids and they had another. So we had 6 kids. They got divorced and dad remarried again and she had 3 kids. So I've had a complicated family life.
Man, give him an E for try. Did he get it? Was third time a charm?
Well, no, not really. It may have been even whatever, a tougher one. That's what moved us to we ended up in Long Island with her and the whole deal. And it was, at the time, a sort of a volatile setting. And so my brother and I were always very tight. And they shipped all of my second stepmother's kids all went away to prep school. So they shipped my brother away to prep school. I was the only one who stayed in public school because as a Navy brat, I'd never been in the same school, 3 years in a row. That was awesome. So stayed there. And they saw that sort of as me rejecting higher education. And so my brother and I were sort of separated there. And Bobby got out of high school, enlisted in the Navy, and did a few years in the Navy, and then ended up in Cambridge at my doorstep, and we were reunited in a way. He was living, and I was out on the road all the time, and we had an extra room, and Bobby was in there and living with me. And he just, it was great reconnecting. We were in high school bands together. He played drums. We sang together, for family reunions kind of stuff. And music was supposed to be part of a well-rounded education, but you didn't do it for a living,
Yeah.
And so Bobby and I were always very close. He started calling himself Rob as he got older. And it was Billy and Bobby, and then it was Will and Rob, And so he had just moved out, and one of his roommate's girlfriends was moving out of an apartment in North Boston. and Bob was over there helping them, and a couple of tough kids, North Boston came around the corner and, hey, you're in our turf, a couple of F-bombs, passed back and forth. And my brother's always the peacemaker. He was, hey, man, we'll be out of here in 10 minutes. And they went around the corner and came back around the corner with a gun, and they shot him 3 times in the heart.
Holy
just a senseless death. And we got the call. It was a Sunday morning. My twins were 3 months old. And it was the best time in my life. I'd even given Bonnie notice to stay home off the road for a tour because I had babies, you know what I mean? And I wanted to be a dad. I really did. We had matching Snugglies, and Janet and I carried them around, and we had these boy-girl twins. And I get this phone call, are you sitting down? Why would I need to? Your brother just died in my arms. And I'm like, you don't even know what hit you. And so we went down to the morgue, and I identified his body in the police morgue. It's just like CSI, but it's not on TV. And something clicked in my head, and I wouldn't have said I used these words at the time. I may have said, nothing's ever going to hurt me like that again. I actually think I did say that out loud because Janet said, what about me? And I just checked out. And the terrible irony of making sort of bitter root judgments like that is that you end up rejecting the people you love the most. My mother died when I was 5. My dad's mother died when he was 9. I believe my granddad's mother died when he was a child. What makes me think I should invest emotionally in my wife, All McFarlane men lose their first ones,
Well, that's one of those defense.
It's one of those defenses.
Things
That's exactly
that you talked
what it
about,
is.
yeah.
So I just kicked into a mode where I went out on the road, gone 200 days a year. I was playing for as many people as I could. It's putting half my money up my nose. Typical. I'm not going there, but I just had this sense you woke up every morning and felt the loss. You just felt the lack. I don't every morning now. There are still times where it blindsides me, because he was my kid brother. It was 40 years ago that I lost him, but I realized at the end of that 3.5 years of defend yourself, don't let anybody in, where you might dance on a bar and everybody think you're the life of the party, but you're just really not engaged and you can't remember their names the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And you realize that's not a better life. It should never be more important than who. It's about people. It's about relationships. The best music is made by people that love each other, that are in the room. The one thing I can say about Muscle Shoals right now is we just did a great little tribute to the Beatles here, where some of their songs connected with Muscle Shoals, like Hey Jude, like the Wilson Pickett version, and and Anna that the Beatles did, the old Arthur Alexander song, and everybody on stage gets off stage, and we have a love fest. We all hug. Our kids know each other. There's something about making music with people you love. And it doesn't always happen, and you can make good music with people you hardly know too, because it becomes the language. It becomes the wonderful thing. But my favorite is it's about people. That's the only thing we take with us, really, our relationships. And musicians that become so myopic that I think they lose their pocket when all they do is play with themselves or come out and do their own thing by themselves. There's something about 4 people in headphones having a conversation that creates something that one soul could never create, unless maybe it's Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And I realized that after 3.5 years of just being defended, nobody's getting in. And I wouldn't have said it in those words. It was just the way I was. And I was self-medicating, And at one point, we just had a touch. We got out of L.A. and we moved down here. And I was still very much estranged from Janet after those 3.5 years. Those were not happy years. It's a miracle she didn't leave me. But she just said sometimes the bottom line was, yeah, great, I'd be on welfare with 2 kids, her starving artist, musician husband, And so she hung in there brilliantly and amazingly with a deep spiritual root. She's a believer. She's a definite believer. And I was rejecting that as one of many windows to enlightenment. But I left the house once in a huff when she had some friends over here, had a friend over here, under the guise of borrowing a dress for a wedding she ended up just really seriously witnessing to me. And it just made me mad. And I got in my car and drove away from home and just got out of the car in the woods and had like a Damascus Road experience. You know what I mean? I just had one of these, oh my God, there's more than what we can, there's just more. There have been too many deep spiritual things that have bypassed my intellect and made it in there, and I've thought them no less real than anything I could empirically come to a conclusion of, And so I just had this deep spiritual awakening, in my soul. And, the first thing I actually did was come to Janet and say, okay, I'm sorry. If there's hope for the two of us to not be a statistic, let's see what happens. And by golly, we've been hacking it out. It doesn't mean we haven't touched the mountain of our destruction. In 41 years, you're going to hit some walls.
Man,
we certainly have. But we're actually happier now. We have laughed more in the last 5 years than we laughed in the previous 10 years, 15, 20 years. We have just broken through into this place where I go, man, every hard choice was worth it. To have what we have now.
Are your kids local?
2 of them are. We have our 2 sons here, and they have 7 kids between them.
Oh wow! So you're busy on the weekends?
We do. We see our grandkids, and they're awesome. And my my oldest son is a twin. And his twin sister still lives in Durham, North Carolina. And we try to get there as much as we can. And she's got one of the most amazing voices. I love playing music with her and her singing. And her husband's a guitar player. And so we have a musical connection here. But just 2 of our sons live here in Muscle Shoals. And actually, my oldest son is a studio bass player here, and people love him. He's a wonderful musician.
That's awesome.
I think he actually feels a lot like Tommy Cogbill. He's got a little of that, it's like somewhere between David Hood and James Jameson.
Those are pretty big references. So he must be.
You know what I mean? From simple and perfect to a whole lot to For Once in My Life.
Yeah.
Which is maybe one of the most brilliant, intuitive bass parts in the world. Somewhere in the middle, there's that natural woman, son of a preacher man kind of bass playing that my son really takes after naturally. And he went to the Bass Collective in New York and studied with John Patitucci and Lincoln Goen. So he's a real bass player. And then my youngest son is a wonderful guitar player in a sort of that ambient way, that U2, Coldplay, Radiohead.
Yeah.
Kind of he orchestrates things in a really interesting way, and they've had bands together, and they're both musical, and they're both writers, and they both create in their home environments now. But my oldest son, as I said, does studio work here in town.
And you get to play with him, I'm assuming, then?
I play with at least weekly.
That's really cool.
Which I wish every dad I know could shoulder to shoulder with their kid and do something they love together every week.
That is really cool.
And I have that. Yes, I have that. It's a very fortunate place to be.
Well, man, first of all, congratulations on 41 years, because I've been with Ann for 25, and it's a lot of work, and and it's not easy, and you both got to want it to have fun. If you're having fun anyway, because there are plenty of people that are together 25, 35, and 41 years, as you know, and they're like 2 strangers and that's not my deal, and it doesn't sound like it's yours. So congratulations, and thank you for sharing that story too. That was
thank you. I actually take most of the credit for all of these things we've learned too, Janet. Janet has wanted relationship. Every word out of her mouth has been desiring relationship, even when I was in La La Land. And so I really give her a lot of credit of wanting to be great. And I don't mean great in a way that the world can see, but great in her own soul. To just know that she's not being bound and burdened by non-essentials to a good life. And so whenever she comes upon a revelation, she gives it to me. And a lot of times I don't want to give her the satisfaction of letting her know she's affecting my life right now. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it, man.
And so so I accept that applause in behalf of Janet, who can't be with us right now.
There you go, man. But I know what it's like when you wall up. And it's a tough thing to unwind.
It really is.
It's really scary.
Yeah. To
be honest with you, and so I get it, man. So I'm happy for you that you're able to do that.
Well, we heard an old Jesse Winchester song the other day.
That's an old one.
And this was one of his later ones because he just passed last year, and that was sad too. We did a midnight special with Jesse.
The midnight special. God, this is like a walk down memory lane. I haven't thought of these things. Yeah,
Wolfman Jack. Hey, man, Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah.
You know? But Jesse did this song, and it goes, if you love someone, that means you need someone. And if you need someone, if you know you need someone, that's what makes you weak. But if you know you're weak and you love someone, that's what makes you strong. And so he did this little circular thing, and I went, well, that's just right. You know, when you finally realize I'm going to take another chance at being vulnerable with this human being, and I'm going to let her see the real me, because most people are afraid that if somebody saw the real them, that they'd reject them. And the fear of rejection manipulates so much human behavior. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And so when you finally realize, you know what, I'm going to take a chance and maybe even be ugly in front of this someone, and you realize they're still there, that sets you free more than anything.
Yeah.
If you realize you're actually going to be accepted unconditionally here, that will set you free. And it'll make you a better person.
Well, it's, everybody's got their demons, and, I'm just glad that you got to, work through some of yours, man, because it's a lot of heavy shit with, losing your mom at a young age, and then,
go through 2 divorces and then lose your brother.
Yeah, that's well, just losing your mom at a young age like that, you can't process that.
No, and what's crazy is my dad was shipped overseas right afterwards, so ostensibly I lost my mom, and a month later lost my dad.
Right.
So I was just with my aunt and my cousins in Texas, and I was trying to find my way as a 6-year-old.
Yeah, and that's that's everything wrong about that. I mean, they say wrong. it's not fair. I hate to say that.
Yeah,
because
I know.
what's lots of shit isn't fair, but that clearly is not fair.
But I started taking voice lessons that year from a lady who started. Everybody down there in Graham, Texas, took voice lessons from this woman. She ended up living till she was over 100, I think. Her name was Alwana, and she tried to put little kids in choirs, but she liked my little 6-year-old voice and taught me the song Poison Ivy. She did songs. And I won a 45 at one point that had Dream Lover by Bobby Darin on it. And I just loved that song. And then I got another 45 of Johnny Horton doing the Battle of New Orleans, 1814. We took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. And I was 6 years old, and all of a sudden music just became, my mom had died, and I had never taken lessons or anything, but it was all of a sudden, it was like I was carrying a mantle that I didn't even really know existed. And when I think about it, actually, I'm processing it right now with you, to realize that year was the year that music bit me, and which is good. Unfortunately, had those series of events not happened, that might not have been the case. You never know.
No, you just don't know. Shit happens.
Yeah, and so I ended up. Yeah, Alwana, just as an aside, she found out. I played Carnegie Hall with Bonnie Raitt back in the '70s, and Alwana found out about it, and she would tell her students, I've had students that have gone on from here to
Carnegie Hall.
Oh.
That's pretty cool. I actually played there. Did you have to sign in? When they have a book there.
I think I did.
Yeah. And I remember I played it there was the Bronx Borough-wide band, and I played saxophone. So we all went there, and the thing I remember is a bunch of us, it was 13 kids, were on the stage, and a bunch of kids went to the very, very top.
The sixth balcony, yeah.
And what was amazing, that we were talking at not a much greater voice than you and I are talking with each other now.
I wanted to test it out during sound check. At one point, when sound check was over, I walked up to the sixth balcony. And at one point, everybody left the stage. It was very quiet down there, and Bonnie was sitting in her stool still doing something, or just putting her something in order. And I just said, "Hey, Bonnie." Just natural voice, just, "Hey, Bonnie." And she looked around like, where's that coming from?
Right.
She heard totally clearly, and I said, "Up here."
So you did the same thing. It's amazing, isn't it?
The same thing. It's amazing, which makes it not that great for electric instruments.
Yeah, I would imagine. It was boing, 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 boing.
Yeah, telling me, "Turn down, can you?" I go, "My God, I'm on 1.5 here. I barely, tubes don't even know I'm using them."
Since this is a guitar podcast, let's talk about guitar for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now, Will? And what other two guitars would you say round out your top three?
Well, my go-to guitar is an early TMG. It was an Australian-made relic, teletype. It's a Blackguard relic.
You got it? You have it? Is it handy?
It sure is.
Can I see it?
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. TMG, they're out of Australia. How'd you come across? Wow. Oh man, it's like a butterscotch with a black.
You see it close, you see all the broken.
Yeah.
It's so cracked, it looks like the Mona Lisa. It's a great guitar. He's changed the headstock a little. And it actually it has my name on the back. It's Will McFarlane, #1.
Very cool. Like, how did you find that guitar?
Well, believe it or not, I was at a NAMM show, and I was just sitting in the Bad Cat booth. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but a young friend of mine that I only met once out there, named Donnie, was one of their sales reps, and he loved my touch. Loved my touch or whatever. He called me, and I think I have a couple of things. This is before I went to NAMM, and he called me on the phone one day to tell me he was a Bad Cat rep, and he loved my touch, and he'd love it if I would play one of their amps. And I thought, wow, this is cool. He said, "Can you come to NAMM?" and yada, yada, yada. He called me a week later, and he said, "And by the way, I'm working with a luthier in Australia who wants to get his footprint in America, and he's wondering who I would recommend." And I say, "Well, Will is a Muscle Shoals guy, but he's not like a highly known individual. My gosh, the biggest my print's pretty small on the back of a record, And he said, but he's got a great touch, and he'd make your guitars sound great if you did use him." And so, I mean, this is it's just a great sounding guitar, even if you go.
Are you playing with a pick? Are you playing with a pick or just your fingers?
Just my fingers.
And you got really long fingernails, I noticed. So you use
I
them?
have just 3 of them. I usually play with a pick and 3 nails. I usually play with a flat pick like this,
And you got some sort of reverb or delay maybe on that?
Actually, my home rig is a deluxe Memory Man into a Tweed Champ.
Okay.
A 58 Champ.
Wow.
Matter of fact.
Boom. Wow. That is every bit a 19. That has got some really cool wear on it.
It's wonderful. It's like got the threads hanging out.
Yeah, but you can't bring that out, though. You don't bring that out, do you?
I don't. Every now and then I think about it, but I get such killer tone, I get such killer tone in my living room. I spend the rest of my life trying to sound that good for the rest of the world.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful, man. I mean,
it's just a great sounding guitar. It has sliders pickups in it. And
how many that amp is that like what 8, 10, 12 watts or something?
It might be. Yeah, I think it's 8 watts. And all it has on the top is on-off. It's just you click it on, and that's the tone you get.
That's so cool, man.
There's two inputs and an on-off knob.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. That's great.
Well, the reason I got this amp was when I did the Late for the Sky tour with Bonnie and Jackson. It was my first big tour. And David Lindley was playing, of course, with Jackson. And I needed a guitar for that tour. I brought out, because my telly was an early 70s piece of junk telly, and it was just sort of that ice pick telly. And to do Bonnie's gig, she caught me so off guard. I actually saw her in a picture with her 175. So I actually had found a 175D in a pawn shop and brought it out there just to match Bonnie, but it was feeding back at stage volume, and it just wasn't the guitar for the Bonnie Raitt gig. I needed a Fender. And so David Lindley loaned me one of his tellies for the rest of the tour, and we had a 3-day break. He took me shopping, and that day I spent $275. For $125, I bought a 63 stock rosewood neck Strat.
Oh my God. How did you find it for that price?
It was 1974. Nobody gave a rip, Oh. And so I bought the 63 Strat. I bought a 59 green metal flake telly with a rosewood neck for $75.
Holy!
Big Daddy Roth had done the paint job and done a little paint job on the of palm trees on the pick guard.
That is so cool.
I bought it for $75, and David said, I'm preamping my amp with a Champ to get my lap steel tone, and you ought to have one of these because they're just great. And so this one didn't have a speaker in it, but he goes, I don't use a speaker anyway. I just use a resistor in there so I can take a 1/4 inch out into my amp, and I preamp his stage amp with this tweed Champ to get that great gnarly lap steel, that real tweedy lap steel sound. So I bought this thinking I was getting ripped off for $75. I bought a 58 tweed Champ for $75.
Wow.
And eventually I wanted it in the house, so I put a little, Mojo speaker in it or something. It just sounds amazing.
Yeah, but that would probably cost $2,000, $2,500.
I've been offered $1,500 for it. People come and hear it and they go, I'll give you $1,500 for it. And I go, no, I'm sorry.
Unless you're like hard up for cash, that's not something you get rid of.
Well, I try not, even when I'm hard up for cash, I try to keep my whole musical economy in a separate place. It's like if I sell something musical, I get something musical.
Getcha. Yeah, I get you. So you have your own ecosystem there.
And pay the utility bill.
Yeah, I get you. Okay, so now you just mentioned 2 rosewoods, but yet that's a maple.
Well, I realized I didn't relate to the rosewood necks. They were darker, and the Strat tone that I was hearing that I loved, was maple. And so I sold my 63 Strat to my buddy for $250, and I bought a 54 Strat 0533 for $400.
And that's that one you got right there.
No, this one is a Danica.
Oh, that's the Danica. Okay.
Yesterday in the mail.
Okay, so hold on a minute. So your number 1 is a TMG. The number 2 would be what?
I think it's going to be this one.
The Danicaster.
Because now for all my studio stuff and slide stuff and in the band Big Shoes, I use my 54.
Okay.
But I don't take it out. It's irreplaceable.
Sure.
I bought it for $400. It's a factory refin because he saw Hendrix at Woodstock and wanted it white. So it's just a white Strat, and I love that guitar, but I have heavier strings on it. I sort of have it jacked up to get Lowell George tone out of,
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a couple. I've been using a little Jimmy Vaughn, just Workaday Fender, which is a nice little Strat, but it was never speaking to me like this one does. This is
that looks rosewood, or is it maple? It's dark.
Is maple, but it's dark. He's relicked it, and it looks like it's got human sweat on the neck.
Gotcha.
And it's a great guitar. I've only had it in my hands now for like 24 hours, but it's got that great.
And And where are they out of?
And Danicaster is a guy named Dan Strain. He's out of Nashville. He was a session guy, but when he went on the road, he didn't want to take his vintage stuff, so he started experimenting and putting stuff together, and it got so good to him. He had people asking him to make him stuff, and now he doesn't have time to be a session guy anymore. He has a 6-month waiting list for his guitars that just feel like when you close your eyes and put them in your lap, they feel like a vintage guitar. It feels like you're playing a vintage instrument. Do
you know Russ Paul, P-A-H-L?
Yeah.
Russ is doing the same thing.
The same thing. I know guys like Guthrie Trapp plays a Russ Paul.
Right. And he winds his own pickups even. Like I think he's got like a sewing machine or something that he does with pickups.
Well, this guy, he goes out and he gets 5 different sets. He gets, Lollers and Buds and Rocket Fires and, he gets all these different ones and he tries them all out in a guitar and sees which one. Because the drill. There are many times I've taken a set of pickups that I've always wanted, and popped them in a guitar and they just don't do it for me. So I just throw them in a little Mexican Strat and all of a sudden they're awake and that guitar just becomes my favorite. And I go, how did that not happen in this more expensive, delightful thing? And you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's wood.
Yeah. And so he uses whatever he feels makes the wood speak. And so these, I believe the pickups in this are called Rocket Fires.
And so the TMG, the Danicaster, and the 54 Strat.
Yeah, and I use an acoustic. I play a James Goodall acoustic that every engineer I've ever worked for adores.
Where is he out of?
He was out of Hawaii. I think he's moved to the West Coast, though. And James Goodall, he searches the world over for tone woods. And apparently when he was in Hawaii, I've heard it may be rumor, but I've heard he dove for his own abalone.
Well, if he didn't, that's the best badass marketing story that I would have come up with. Our abalone comes from right here, right off the shores of Maui.
Yes, he dived for his own abalone.
Yeah, you could quadruple or quintuple the price of that sucker.
And it's a beautiful, these are beautiful handmade guitars of the level of Olsons and McPhersons and that kind of thing. And I love it. It's the most even instrument, amazingly intonated. I finally had to refret it. I was worried about that after 20 years and finally refret it. But I'll go up to Nashville and every now and then I'll bring it and I'll say, do you have an acoustic? I'll put it on tape. And they'll just put a mic up in front of it just to get it. And the moment it comes up in my headphones, the engineer's back in the room going, what is that? I've got you flat. I don't cut anybody flat. What is this? It's just the most even. It glistens up top like James Taylor, but it's got the low integrity without rolling any of that like Martin Dreadnought hump off, And it's just an even guitar that's so articulate to me. It's one of my favorite instruments.
And you're a very stringent tone guy, so if you're saying that, that's a pretty good. You got to tell that guy to take this sound clip. It's a commercial for the guy.
Man, he makes great guitars. And then I have a Les Paul for power chords. And
wait a minute. That Les Paul, that's where I first saw you playing. That was magic, man. Honestly.
It's just a reissue classic. And if there's one thing I could do, I'd like to dial it down a little because it's so hot. Like when I plug it into my pedal board or whatever, I have to turn everything down because it's just so hot.
Oh, the classics, because that's a classic. They have the hottest. It's like a 498 and a 490. I think there's only one Les Paul pickup that's hotter than that. Those are the hottest pickups they have.
Yeah. It's just so hot, and you hear these wonderful 58, 59s that have a little spank in the middle, and mine doesn't. Mine's just loaded for bear. It's the best power chord guitar, but it's never become my number one axe. And when you see Les Paul guys, they're still always hitting a note and then adjusting a knob and then hitting a note, because everything's changing, at all the times. And I'm a master volume, master tone guy,
Sure.
But I do use it for power chords, and I have a little Electromatic Gretsch with a Bigsby on it that gives me. You put a little tremolo on it, and do the Americana thing, and you just do delay, and people think you're an orchestral genius.
Well, Greg Martin has a he's a Les Paul guy. He has a 58, and it's just so sweet, that guitar. And he's the same way. He's just volume and tone. He's not a big pedals guy or nothing. Yeah. It's just him, cable, Marshall. That's it.
And I love Greg, and I love, finally and after all, becoming friends and getting a gig with him. We both played for Jimmy Hall on the Delbert Cruise one year.
Okay.
And that was the Les Paul that I picked up and went, oh, if that's the bar, I don't have a Les Paul.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I love mine, but it all of a sudden put me on that wonderful, sort of quest.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody who has one that feels like that, they all want, 15 to 30 grand for them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
For his, 250
Yeah,
grand.
for his, it's more like 250, yeah. It's funny, after I spoke with you the first time, I speak with Greg, not often, but, often enough. And I said, hey, man, I met this guy, and I think you guys would get along really good. I don't know if you know him, but if you don't, you ought to, and I'll introduce you. And he said, oh, yeah, Will's a great guy, and we got along. We met on the cruise, and, because I know spiritually you guys are, have the same vibe, and, you're both very similar, not similar, but he's really a good guy, you're a good guy, so I figured I got to hook you guys up. But then he said, you guys.
Yeah, it blew my mind when he said, wait a minute, Will McFarlane, when we first were introduced, Will McFarlane, did you put out a CD once? I said, yeah. He goes, man, I played the Axe to the Root. He goes, we played that on the bus all the time. And I was so honored by that. I was like, you're kidding me, and we just had a great meeting of the minds and a great musical adventure.
Yeah. And,
of course, when you're playing with Jimmy Hall, again, that's wide open.
Yeah. I would imagine that's a good.
We got to trade a little, and he was great. Yeah. Just a wonderful guy.
He was down here recently, so I got to meet him in person, but he was just getting over the flu. And the poor guy, the one day they come to Florida, it's an outdoor show. It's 47 degrees.
Oh, man.
I don't know how he did it, man. It was windy. It was at night. It was chilly. It was just, poor guy. But
that's where you take Cinnamon Girl solos. You're just going,
yeah.
It's just nerve vibrato,
Yeah, that, he's just, I'm glad you guys know each other, though. Hey, so Will, what is something that you've kind of learned about yourself along this very long journey you've been on?
Well, I guess I've learned, that there's some things I can't be objective about. You can't be, if you compare yourself among yourself, when you work in LA and you're playing with somebody like Bonnie, who's so talented, you can be insecure about your standing in the midst of everything. And even though you're in an amazing position musically, you know what good is, you know what real is, you know what they all are, and you tend to be your own worst judge. And you realize at one point or another, people may hear something in my playing that I simply can't be objective about, so you can't be that hard on yourself. You sort of just have to accept, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I love. And I'm a mutt. I'm a mixture of so many influences that in any given day, another influence may rear its head, in there. And all of a sudden you're just really satisfied musically by the way you're playing that day. And you may not have gone to those places in a while, but they're in your reservoir and they come out, and just don't restrict yourself in your own mind to what you are or aren't. And if you aren't something and you like that thing, get better at it. Don't concentrate on not being able to do it. Just sort of shore up the weaknesses, Don't be hard on yourself. Just, and I realize I'm a fallible human being. I mean, you learn that 41 years of being married.
Hell yeah.
Realize that you can still misunderstand something, that the one you love the most says, and all of a sudden there's friction. You go, what the hell? I guess I haven't achieved nirvana in this environment yet, And so I just not take what you do seriously. Just don't take yourself seriously while you're doing it. Don't be such a harsh critic on your own inabilities. Just, I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, well, it's a real good answer. And when it's an answer that, did you always have that attitude? Because it's an answer that typically I would not think a younger person would have, especially like that answer indicates to me that you're saying, have fun, man. Enjoy this thing.
You know, there are some guitar players I listen to and I think, I got to practice. I was so lazy. It came to me so easily. If I had really been a diligent student, I'd be amazing now. I would really be good, you know, but I just let my gifting overrule my discipline, you know, and I'll listen to some people play and I go, man, I need to practice more. And I listen to other people play and I go, I need to turn up and have more fun. I need, you know, there's something they do to me. And then, of course, you listen to some people and you go, I got to stop overplaying. I got to leave stuff out. You know, everybody sort of has that. But the ones I really like are the ones that just make me laugh. Like they just do something in the middle of a solo. And I realize they have such a musical sense of humor. They just make me want to play. They make me want to get better, but not mathematically. They make me want to get better by just being unblocked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
I think in a lot of ways, I'm blocked artistically. I watched the people when I was younger who were unblocked, who were amazing artists, and a lot of them died young, and a lot of them had terrible interpersonal relationships and family lives, but they were artists to the max. They were amazing. And so in a way, I think I had a governor in the back of my brain that went, don't get all the way over there with them, you know, don't get, and so here I am still alive and reasonably coherent. And you know what I'm saying? I think that I'm blocked a little for my own self-protection. And lately, like even playing with Kelvin will all of a sudden go into like, you know, Sailor's Hornpipe or something in the middle of a solo or whatever, or Green Acres. And I just burst out laughing. Bam, bam, you know, he'll just do something so funny to me. And I realized, gosh, I don't think I'd have ever done that, you know. And it doesn't make me want to get better. It just wants me to be freer, you know, to play what's at my finger's disposal. And I think that the older you get, you just finally realize, you know, if I screw up, nobody's going to die. You know, I'm not going to hurt anybody except maybe my own fragile ego, you know, that all of a sudden I go, boy, did that suck. But in general, I like listening to musicians that make me laugh, that make me just simply want to have more fun when I'm playing and not think, oh, I have to be tastefully elegant here, which I do most of the time in the studio.
Yeah, I think you're pretty tastefully elegant, naturally, though.
So live, I overplay tastelessly so that I can get it out of my system.
No, I've seen you play live. You don't, on video anyway. I don't think you're very tasteful. I mean, I think tasteful is probably a very good word to describe your playing, as a matter of fact. It's extremely tastefully elegant, as you said. I mean, that's, you know.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, do you think some of that, like you seem like an intense guy, not like intense, but you know, you've spent a lot of time thinking things through, and I like that. I'm like that, and I'm wondering, do you think it's some of that is because when I first started playing guitar, one of the things why I really liked it was I realized I've got to be in the present. And I'm not somebody that by nature, because I'm pretty intense, I'm not. And it helped me so much that, because, you know, you can't be playing and thinking about, shit, I have a meeting next week, or, man, last week I had a problem with my son or with some client, or, you know, you can, but it's not, it's like a waste of time. You got to be right there. Yeah. And that helped me so much take that sort of trying to be present then to like other things, to the point where like now I'm almost like a reformed smoker about it. Like if my wife says, "Hey, what's going to happen?" I'm like, I don't know. I'll worry about it when it happens. And not in like a coarse way to cut her off, but just like, hey, hon,
I'm very much that way.
Yeah.
I am very much worry is so almost counterintuitive. We all deal with it at times, but I realize if I'm dealing with presumption in my head and something hasn't happened yet and I'm expecting the worst, I spend all this time tearing down my body chemistry and all this horrible stuff that they say stress and worry does to your body, and you get there and it doesn't happen. You realize how much wasted mental energy that was. And I don't think it's denial to just go, you know what, that hadn't happened yet. I'm not going to assume the worst. And I've learned some skills in that way too. I think all of us have to learn some skills to just simply go, I got to cut that thinking off now. And it's not denial. It's just good sense. It's learning to prioritize well, to go, you know what, right now that's not going to be on the top of my grid. That's just simply not going to have any preeminence right now. It is not mandatory that I worry about that right now. Right now I'm playing the guitar.
Yeah. And like for me, what happened was I realized that I'm responsible for a lot of stress in my life.
Yes.
And I really wanted that to change. So this all happened when I started playing guitar, and it was all a big part of it. And I was like, when I stopped, like dealing with what if, man, honestly, it was like a 1,000,000-pound weight.
Good.
I swear, man, it was like, and I was like, God, what an asshole I am. I cannot believe I've been like carrying all this extra, willingly, voluntarily registering, signed up for no reason, carrying this weight of bullshit on my shoulders. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
It was like, and all this came through starting to play the guitar, which was like really weird.
I always tell people, you can get upset. You can get upset on a piano, but you can, you can cry on a guitar.
Yeah, right.
You can get upset in other places, but you can cry on this, and it's just
right. And like that feels like I feel that emotion literally just pouring off of you when you're doing that.
It's just, it's just there, and it's very, very satisfying.
I got goosebumps, man. That was awesome. I felt that, man. That was cool. It was funny because when we watched Jeff playing. I was before just to tell the listeners, before we started, I was talking with Will. There's a guy named Jeff King. He's a really good session player in Nashville, and he was in town this week, and he plays for Reba, so he was kind enough to give my wife and I tickets. And so we're at the show, and they had this big ass screens, and they were showing Jeff when he was soloing, and he was like, grimacing, and Ann says, "Look at his face," and I said, "That's what he's just feeling it, That's just."
I see videos of me every now and then, and it's just so out there. I go, oh my God, I must really not be that self-conscious, or I wouldn't let myself look like that publicly.
All right, I'm going to ask you a tough question.
All right.
What do you like most about yourself?
That caught me off guard. I'm usually a pretty knee-jerk answer guy, but what do I like most about myself? I think that in a way, I think I like my life overview, that it's really helped me prioritize, especially the older you get. We've talked about it a little, that a lot of it you just start moving a little more slowly, and you simply can't be as engaged in some stuff that's non-essential. You just finally have to prioritize and go, you know what, I'm just too tired to worry about that right now. Sometimes it's tired. Sometimes it's just sheer, this is what the world looks like, and I can't know everything, but I know there are really dark, needy places in the world right now. And I'm not in that place. I'm fortunate. My utilities are working in my house. I've been fed today. I have a car that runs, and And I try to keep my overview in perspective. And when I flush hot, like all of us do at some time, when you hear some piece of information or something is said to you that hits you wrong or whatever, when you flush hot, your initial reaction to whatever, fight or flight, I really try to go, wait a minute, just be thankful, or, just forgive, or, because it's not worth it. I've heard that wonderful analogy that being unforgiving is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill the other person.
Wow, that's good, man. I've never heard that. That's really good.
So, being ungrateful or unforgiving or all of that, all it's doing is it's screwing up my body chemistry. It's screwing up my psyche. It's making me sick. And if the other guy never gets it right with me, at least in my conscience, I can go, I release him or her to just be who they are, far out. And I think that my overview of what's important in life, some people think I gave up something at one point to keep my marriage together or whatever. But now at this point in my life, I look back and realize every hard choice I made to stay in this relationship, to be a present father, to do all these other things. Yeah, did I want to be a rock star? Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I really didn't that way. I just wanted to play the guitar and go wherever it took me. I never thought I'd be a rock star. I never really even thought I'd be a lead guitar player or anything. I'm really a rhythm player at heart. I love being part of the band. I love hearing the hi-hat and doing some spanking rhythm stuff. And if they want me to take a solo, that's great. But if I do a whole night without taking a solo, I'm good with that too. Because being in the band is great to me. And I wanted to play music for a living. I really did. Because I thought that there was nothing else I did in life that actually moved my soul but music, And so I wanted all of those things. But when I really added it up and realized being gone 250 days a year, and even when I was gone less than that, I'd come home and my 2-year-old kids would look at me like, okay, sort of looks like me. He's in bed with mom. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And I realized, is that what I'm going to look back at my life and say, wow, man, I toured in rock and roll for all these years? Or I'm going to look back and say, wow, my grown kids still kiss me. They still invite me over for dinner. And I'm not trying to wax too philosophical here. I'm just saying that it is never as important as who. No theory, no career, it's never as important as a person.
No, I agree.
And even if I think I'm right and they're wrong, and they believe I'm wrong, and there's a misunderstanding, they can still know, I may disagree with you, but you can tell from my heart that I'll fight for your right to feel that way.
Sure.
I'm not going to fight this battle. This is non-essential to my emotional well-being. I'm not going to let circumstances manipulate my emotional well-being. And so, music's in there. Music has a powerful healing thing. My faith is in there. It's all of these things that when I'm reacting, I don't think anything good gets done in reaction. There's a difference between reacting and responding. It's like if I'm responding to a heart need, that's an honest thing. If I'm responding to a show of affection from my wife, but if I just react to something she says, almost nothing valuable ever comes from reaction.
Yeah, 100%.
But so I try to wonder, why did I just react to that? Why did I flush hot? It's because I'm bent in that way somewhere. And is that how I want to be? No. And I may not get over it that quickly. But in a nutshell, looking back, I realized that I picked people over a career. I picked relationships over a more maybe illustrious career because, and now I realize at this stage in my life every one of those hard choices was worth it.
And I would bet you 100% of those people, not that it was any of their business in the first place, but 100% of those people who judged you or had a comment would trade places to have a lockdown, meaningful, long-term relationship like that. They cut off their right arm for it.
Yeah,
I would think.
Yeah, well, in many times in my life when I come walking into a room, you know, I sing on stage with my wife, and when people find out we've been together all this time or whatever, and our son is playing bass behind us, and he's great, and people look at this family, and I mean, the toughest like biker in the audience will sometimes walk up and say, "Man, you were hot tonight, and must be awesome to play with your boy." And you realize that just standing next to my wife or just standing next to my son sort of reveals in people, wow, I don't have anything that I get to do with my kids like that. And I'm not being arrogant about
No, not at all. You're grateful for it.
I'm just so thankful.
Arrogance, yeah.
I'm so thankful, and it turns out that it does actually touch people's hearts to see something that works. Janet and I joke about it every now and then, that when people come to see us, they really enjoy us because people like to just see something that seems to be working.
Yeah. And the other thing people don't seem to understand is you didn't just wake up and it worked. This is 41 years of adjusting, working, trying, connecting. No, that doesn't work. Let's try. You know, it's like, you know, you got a guy who's a great heart surgeon. Oh, how do you do this? Well, because I've done 2,500 of these in the last 40 years. You know, I didn't wake up Thursday and say, wow, here's what I could do. And
I wasn't always, you know, honestly, Craig, I wasn't always the one in our relationship that was the aggressor in making it better. You know, I got to give that credit to Janet. Nobody wants to be a finer human being than my wife. And she saw things in herself that came from her youth and her past that seemed that were cutting in on her. And so she's read the books and thought about it and tried to entreat me into the situation and said, we need skills in this way because I don't feel loved in this way. And, you know, and when you respond this way, I take it personally and da-da-da-da-da. And so, yeah, we've touched the mountain of our destruction several times, but we've always gone, wait a minute, you're the one I get. Let's figure this out. Let's work the bugs out. Because if we broke up, I'm just going to drag what a jerk I am into the next one anyway. Eventually it would rear its ugly head there, you know.
It's funny. My buddy has an expression, and he's one of these guys, super good guy, but, you know, I guess he's gone astray a few times. And his expression now is when he sees like some attractive woman, he says to himself, you know, somewhere somebody's sick of her shit too. He's always like, okay, I need to, you know, think, you know, and it's kind of the same thing. Like, you know, you might as well get it with someone that's working with, because, you know, the alternative ain't pretty, man.
And who wants to start? I don't want, you know, good Lord, I don't want to start over. We've worked some bugs out here.
Yeah.
It's like investing in a stock and then selling short.
Yeah.
After you've held on to the stock your whole life. I mean, that sounds too brass tacks to me.
No, but I agree. You know,
anyway, but I'm nobody's judge. These are volatile times, and I am, you know, nobody's judge. All I can say is that for my life, I think Janet and I working together on this marriage and keeping and being there for our kids. And, you know, I was a little league coach for all their young days, and
it's great stuff, man. You know, you see those little kids.
Stuff. I had a life.
Yeah.
You know, I lived a life, and I'm still living it.
Yeah. That's great. What's your, tell me something about yourself that people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
I think the thing that people are always shocked by is that when I take a Myers-Briggs test or something like that, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like, sure. Personality profile.
We've taken a few of them so that Janet and I can help understand each other. And she'd say, you want to read what this says I am, and you want to read. When I take a Myers-Briggs test, I come out as an introvert. And like my friends, my friends are always, you're kidding me, because I'm the most talkative public character that they know. And they think Will is a total extrovert. But I restore in silence. It's like I go out in the world and I'm 100% and I enjoy it and I'm all 100. And then I come home and I crawl into a hollow log, and I just,
I do know.
And I read and I restore in silence. And so when you answer these personality questions, and some of the questions are sort of like, do you walk to school or carry your lunch, There's sort of questions that you don't actually, is it shorter to New York or by bus, These kind of absurd questions. And you answer them and you come out like an introvert where you teeter on the edge of, and I think my friends would be shocked to know that I restore in silence.
Does it? I've met guys who, like in business meetings, are really talkative, and they've told me the same thing. But they, like, one guy in particular, he said, at the end of this meeting, I'm just wiped out. I don't get that sense that you're like wiped out though. Like it's drained.
No, but we joke about it. Like, I'll come home and Janet will say something to me and I go, huh? And she'll say something and I'll go, I've used all my words. It's like, they say, a man only uses 7,000 to 12,000 words a day and a woman 12 to 50,000 or whatever. And
I've used all my words. I like that one.
Probably more on the 15 to 20,000. But when I've used them all, that's it.
You got no reserves.
Like notes too. There are days I've played. You cut 6 tracks, and I think, am I stealing from? Have I used all my notes today? I don't have another musical idea.
I like
you need
that.
to go home and restore in silence. And all of a sudden you just somehow in your mind you learn something musical that you wish you'd done that day, and you don't even practice. But the next time you pick up your guitar, it's just as fluent, comes right out, because somewhere in your mind, once you've restored, all this other stuff comes up that's actually almost like practicing without an instrument in your hand, And a lot of times my thought processes in coming back into circulation, are actually almost like a lesson to me. I start thinking melodically and things come to my head and I don't even, you picture them, you can visualize them almost, but when you pick up the guitar, all of a sudden you're doing something and you think, that's familiar, what is that? And you realize, oh wait, that was what I was thinking about this afternoon, and it just comes out and, it's part of the process.
It's cool,
making
man.
it back publicly,
Very cool. I'm going to ask you 3 more questions, Will. First one, any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Well, it's funny. I have a Harley that's my shrink. I get on that bike and almost every beautiful day and just go out these county roads around here and man, you have to be on your game enough not to die. You got to not die on it. So you've got to maintain a certain in the present now and be very, very defensive and look around and make sure you got your eyes open. But you also smell things. You smell, in the spring you're smelling the honeysuckle and or you smell a newly mowed lawn that had onion grass in it and all the things you don't get in the car, and your olfactory thing takes you to places. They always say that it's like walking up in an attic and you have a smell and instantly you're in your grandparents' attic. Or that there are all these quick conduits right to your brain, from your nose. And so I love riding my Harley. And pretty much, I used to actually like to go walk 9 holes once or twice a week. I didn't do it for years. I did it in high school because my dad did it. And we lived on Navy bases, and, you could just walk a little circle. And then it was so bourgeois during the hippie thing, playing golf.
Yeah.
So nobody did it. But now it's like almost the #1 rock and roll sport, all these. I mean, Alice Cooper's a golfer.
Yeah, a lot of guys play golf.
Vince Gill's apparently a par golfer, or better. And so I did it a lot for a while to get good enough not to hold up play. But But now it's sort of hit the ball drag, Will. I only go out maybe 2 or 3 times a year, but it's like, maybe it's just all the oxygen being made from the carbon dioxide. You're out there and it's nothing but trees and you're getting a lot of O2, and it's like a vacation within a day. You don't hear cars going by, and you get out and you have to concentrate so much on this little thing to get it, 400 yards into a 4-inch hole. You know what I mean? It's,
sure.
It clears out some cobwebs, but I'm not that, I don't do it that much anymore, but I do like to ride the Harley, and I guess that's a hobby.
Yeah, very much.
Well, when you do, when your avocation becomes your vocation, when it was never, to me, music was never a hobby. It was something that I felt that was so inherent inside. I never did it for significance. I just did it because I felt like that's what I was. And when it becomes the way you make your living, in some ways you need to sort of, a lot of people say, well, I have music as a hobby. I pick up my guitar and it soothes the savage breast.
Right.
Well, I come home from a day in the studio, and there are lots of times where, that's enough of that.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm just get on my bike and drive off and, get it out of my system or something.
I totally get it, man. Another tough question. Any regrets?
You always regret what you didn't say. Yeah, I mean, I wish I was a better listener when I was young, because I'll see old footage of Bonnie and I think, God, I'm hitting it so hard. I should have been sweeter. That's not a deep regret. I just wish I'd been more. I wish I'd trusted. I felt like I had to prove something when I was younger.
Totally
and so
get that.
I played harder. I wish I had just been myself then too. I wish I'd said I love you more to people that I've lost. I have like the standard human regret, but you can't go there.
Right.
You can't. Regret is an absolutely inefficient thought process. It does. You could say, well, it'll make you better from here on out, but it doesn't really. It just makes you still the dominant man. Did I blow that? Is so much bigger than I'm going to get better, because that's pretty subjective, And so I would say you can't live in regret, but, I wish I hadn't made Janet's life so difficult when we were young in the Lord. When I lost my brother, I for 3.5 years, I was just a non-entity in an emotional way. I was not safe, and so, when you alienate people that you love the most, and you don't do it because you don't love them. You do it because you're just guarding your own heart.
Oh, you're scared. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
being vulnerable, it's not scary. Easy. Yeah. It's especially if you got other shit going on, giving you good reasons to justify not being vulnerable, which is much easier in the first place.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I
just wish, I could honestly say in a lot of ways, I spent a lot of my life, I'm a frustrated comedian anyway, so I spent a lot of my life, I love my wife's laugh, and I spend a lot of time cracking her up, and I enjoy that. And it's not that I have some agenda that I want you to look back at your life after I go and think, man, that was a good life, as opposed to, man, that was a hard life, but we hung in there and made it. I don't want that to be Janet's, life assessment. I really want to finish well.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it in reaction to what I did badly, because you can't go there. But if you don't learn from your mistakes, as they say, you're doomed to repeat them. And so 100%. I think that whenever something comes up and I go, man, I'm sorry I ever made you feel that way or whatever, that won't happen again.
Sure.
And hopefully it won't.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you about regret, because you're looking in the rearview mirror, and that's generally never a good place to be very long.
It manipulates your emotions a lot, because you can't go back. You simply can't, and I guess like in things like NA or AA or whatever, they talk about making restitution. And I didn't go through that or anything like that. Who knows, it might have helped, but I'm not a real addictive personality. But I have over the past every now and then gotten in touch with somebody and said, that time, I know that I really annoyed you then. And that was never my intention, and I'm sorry. And it feels good. I mean, I've done it to my kids.
Yeah.
Go back to your kids and go, man, I really missed it there, man. I was driving a hard bargain. I don't even know why. I hope you're good with it. And I'm sorry I went there. And, every now and then you try to make restitution or go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in most cases, you just have to set your face forward and go, we're going to finish well. We're going to love. We're going to laugh when it's funny. We're going to cry when it's sad. We're going to be honest. And we're going to try to finish well. And hopefully that'll manifest itself in all that we do, especially the music, which I'm still relying on, and for our provision, for, for my soul, I'm still relying on it. So I hope it makes it better. And when people like you say, man, I love your touch, I think, well, good. I'm getting better as I get older. I'm still learning something here.
It's interesting you said that. When I was a kid, I was really mean, and not because I was a mean person, because I had a very difficult home life, and that's all I knew. And a number of people in the last, 5-6 years have friended me on Facebook that were kids that I was really mean to. And I was surprised. I was like, oh my God. And I felt embarrassed. And every single one of them, I reached out to them and I apologized. And I felt like, and there was no apologies needed, because they weren't going to bed every night thinking for the last 50 years, God, Craig Garber is such an asshole. They probably hadn't thought, but I felt so good about it. And a couple of them were like, I really appreciate that. It's very nice of you. And I'm sad that you had to go through that. And I was like, no, it's all good. I mean, but it wasn't you, it was me. I had shit going on that I didn't know how to process at the time. And my reaction to that was just basically repeat bad behavior. I didn't know any better. So I've done that. It actually felt really good. It was definitely cleaning out, again, it was all in my head, not in nobody had gone to was thinking about it. So last question, man. And we've kind of talked about it, but what do you feel has been the biggest change in your personality, Will, over the last 10 years? And how much of this has been deliberate and how much you think is just a part of aging?
Well, I'm sure that's a tough line to discern, but I would venture to say that in the last 10 years, I've definitely, I think I've set my sights on, making sure, my marriage is restored and the good stuff, the being in the now, the trying to listen, trying to pay more attention, and again, a lot of the aging process, as I said, is still some stuff you just have to look at it and go, that's just not going to make it into my priority list. I think one of the great benefits of aging is learning to prioritize well.
Yeah.
If you're smart, you're gonna simply just have to say, when you're young, you're strong enough to spread yourself pretty thin. You can be, as they say, 3 miles wide and 1/8 inch deep, but you can get a lot done that way. You've got your irons and all these fires, and you start bringing it in, and you get deeper and deeper and deeper, and you know what I'm saying, and less wide. And so I think that in the last 10 years, that's happened to me. I've come to terms with my strengths and realize that when I say them out loud, I'm not being arrogant. I'm just good at that.
Yeah.
And I've come to terms with my weaknesses, and I'm not just being humble when I say that. I'm just aware of it. That's not the thing I look at it. It's just true. It's not being, arrogant or humble. It's just making proper assessments. And that means that if correction comes your way, and let's face it, nobody likes to be corrected. And even if Janet, might look at me and say, well, this and this and this, and it might sort of fly over me, you have to admit, well, I'm sorry she's perceiving me that way. I may not even see I have never had that thought, but apparently it's being perceived that way. So I'd better come to terms with that kind of behavior and reel it in or get rid of it, or whatever. So we're working together. We're trying to finish well. That's sort of a mantra.
That's good, man. Well,
let's finish well.
I hope in your positive incantations in there is that you're a great guitar player and a very genuine guy, because you certainly are. And it's been I really appreciate your time well spent here, man.
Well, this has been great, Craig. I'm honored considering the list of people that I ended up on your list. So I appreciate it.
I'm honored that you're here, man. Are you kidding me? I want to tell people where to find you. First of all, it's Will McFarlane. His last name is McFarlane. You can find him on willmcfarlane.com. He is one of the Swampers from the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section. And if you haven't heard Will play, please go check him out online on YouTube. He's a wonderful player. He's just got a beautiful, gentle touch. He's kind of like if you took Leslie West and cut him down from 11 to 5, it might be Will. His tone is beautiful, but Leslie's just, Will's just a little more gentle and subtle and soulful, and he's a great guy. So you can find Will on YouTube. Also, he does give lessons to intermediate players, but just don't kind of be a dick. Just be genuine about wanting to become a better guitar player. And those are my words, not his, by the way. Well, because, I don't want... Anyway, so if you're interested in working with Will, go to his website and, go to the contact information and be gentle, because he's a hell of a nice guy. And if you get the opportunity to work with him, it's cherish that, because he's not like the guy down the street in your neighborhood in Sandusky, Ohio. Nothing against Sandusky, Ohio. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know why I pulled it out. I've never said that word in my life, but I think it's a place, right? Yeah. Anyway, man, I can't thank you for your time enough. Any final words of wisdom or anything else that people could find you or send you money?
Yeah. No, my words of wisdom would be, I always tell young players that are, busy learning what they want to do. They're busy practice. They're busy learning what they do. It takes 10 or 15 years, whatever, to get, so that you have something sort of valuable to add to the professional score out there. And then it takes a long time to figure out how to cull that. And I still get back to the idea that it's a fool who speaks his whole mind all the time, and so musically, I always tell people, if you know what to do, you'll get an occasional job. But if you know what to leave out, you can make a living. Awesome.
I like that. It's a fool who speaks his whole mind all the time. And I must say, I have been a fool at times in my own relationship. So
I think we all have.
You're not alone. That saying is very applicable. Man, I can't thank you enough. This has been a pleasure. I know we'll be in contact again. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. And I hope you realize, and this is my words, not Will, this guy is like a genius, and he's played on so many freaking records, and he's a very smart player. So I hope you enjoyed the time with Will. I certainly appreciate it. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes, along with some early product announcements and discounts. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play a guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.